Tonight beauty begins before sunrise in a quiet Joseon house where looking effortless requires an astonishing amount of very visible work. You are not waking as a queen or a painted entertainer, but as a noblewoman whose face, hair, clothing, and fragrance all carry social meaning. Before breakfast, grain will become cleanser, flowers will become color, hair will become architecture, and several attendants will become quietly exhausted. The ideal is modest simplicity, which is fortunate because achieving modest simplicity may consume most of the morning and the contents of several porcelain jars. If these gentle journeys into history help you unwind, you might leave a quiet like and join us for the next one, only if this is truly your kind of evening. Thank you as well to everyone who suggests our next quiet historical detour. Your curiosity keeps the lamps burning in many imaginary rooms. Tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time the night has reached in your corner of the world. Somewhere someone is awake after midnight wondering whether a Joseon hairpiece could cost more than a house. Uncomfortably, the answer can be yes. Now lower the light, settle beneath the blanket, and let a fan, soft rain, or the ordinary hush of your room keep you company. There will be no hurried makeover, no impossible transformation, and no claim that every woman across 5 centuries followed one identical routine. Only warm water, powdered beans, beeswax, safflower silk, combs, perfume pouches, paper doors, and the patient work of many hands. The courtyard is still blue. The ondol floor is warm, and behind a painted screen, your long preparation for an apparently natural face begins. The woman you will follow tonight is an imagined member of a prosperous Yangban household in late 18th century Hanyang, the city now called Seoul. She is not a portrait of every noblewoman, and her day borrows carefully from household manuals, medical texts, court records, surviving objects, and paintings made across different decades. That distinction matters. Joseon lasted from 1392 until 1910, longer than the distance between Shakespeare and the smartphone, and fashions changed within it. A woman in the 15th century did not arrange her sleeves or hair exactly like a woman in the 19th. Palace practice was not village practice, and a princess with imported porcelain containers possessed choices unavailable to a tenant farmer's wife. So let us call our noblewoman Lady Seo and place her in a comfortable household around the 1790s, when large hairpieces had become controversial, short jackets and full skirts shaped fashionable silhouettes, and women's practical knowledge circulated in handwritten recipes. She is fictional. The labor, materials, pressures, and small pleasures around her are not. To understand why Lady Seo's appearance can carry so much weight, imagine the household as a set of nested audiences. Her husband may see her in informal clothing, senior female relatives judge propriety, servants observe consistency, visiting kin assess prosperity, and ritual occasions place the family before its ancestors. None sees exactly the same woman. Beauty is adjusted to distance and relationship. A bright ribbon charming in the women's room may be childish before an elder. An unpowdered face comfortable at breakfast may feel careless during formal greetings. The routine is therefore less like preparing one portrait than preparing a language with different levels of formality. Lady Seo learned that language before she could explain it. She remembers being corrected for staring, for slouching, and for choosing a spring hair ribbon after the festival that permitted it had passed. The lesson was never simply that she must be pretty, she must be legible. Lady Seo wakes on a cotton-filled mattress laid over the warm section of an ondol floor. During the night, smoke and hot air from a kitchen fire have traveled through stone flues beneath the room before leaving through a chimney beyond the wall. This ingenious heating makes winter bearable, but also gives morning beauty its first complication. A face resting close to heated air may feel dry, while the edge of the room near the paper doors remains cool. She does not leap up. Bedding must be folded, privacy screens adjusted, lamps trimmed, and warm washing water requested. The household is already moving outside her chamber. A servant crosses the courtyard with a brass basin. Another brings a covered pot. Somewhere behind the women's quarters, grain is being washed for breakfast. The soft rasp of a broom passes over packed earth. Beauty begins here not with color, but with temperature, water, clean cloth, and the privilege of having other people prepare them before daylight. The house itself shapes that legibility. Men's reception rooms and women's inner quarters are separated by architecture, custom, and degree, rather than by one absolute wall, obeyed identically in every family. Paper doors diffuse light, wooden thresholds slow movement, Courtyards expose weather, and folding screens create privacy within rooms that remain flexible. A dressing space can become a sleeping room, sewing room, or place for receiving close female kin after bedding, and tools are rearranged. Lady Seo does not own a dedicated bathroom filled permanently with beauty objects. Each morning, the room is assembled around her and then returned to household use. The temporary nature of the setting makes the lacquer mirror stand especially practical. Close the lid, slide away the basin, fold the screen, and the evidence of an elaborate preparation vanishes almost as efficiently as the powder is meant to. There is no large sheet of flawless modern glass waiting above a marble counter. Mirrors in Joseon homes were commonly polished metal, often bronze, and their reflected world was darker and softer than ours. A round mirror might rest on a folding lacquered stand whose small drawer holds combs, threads, and cosmetic tools. The lid folds back, the disc rises, and Lady Seo's face appears with the muted glow of a moon seen through haze. This is not necessarily a disadvantage. Modern bathrooms offer merciless overhead lighting and the opportunity to inspect a pore as if it were a disputed border. Her mirror provides shape, color, and proportion, not microscopic prosecution. Yet it carries status. A decorated stand, perhaps inlaid with mother-of-pearl or painted with landscape motifs, is furniture, storage, and display at once. When closed, it protects the mirror. When opened, it announces that the private work of presentation is about to begin. There is comfort in the repetition. The attendants know the order. The jars sit in familiar places, and Lady Seo can predict the small coolness of water before it touches her face. Routine reduces the need for decisions in a society already thick with rules. It also creates a private interval among women before the household demands speech and judgment. They exchange news, notice health, and sometimes laughed. Dry humor is not a modern invention, though the archives rarely record who compared an oversized Gache to a roof beam at 6 in the morning. The dressing room can contain affection and boredom alongside hierarchy. One woman serves, another is served, and both understand that a crooked hairpin will become the day's first shared problem. 2 women assist her, though the number would vary with wealth and circumstance. One is older and trusted with clothing, keys, and the delicate politics of the inner household. The other is young enough to be quick on cold flagstones and experienced enough not to spill rinse water on a silk skirt. Their presence turns the routine into a social performance long before Lady Seo enters public view. Sleeves are lifted. Hair is inspected. A basin is placed at the correct distance. The older attendant notices a rough patch beside the cheek and says that yesterday's wind was too sharp. Lady Seo replies that the courtyard was unavoidable. Neither says that a noblewoman's appearance will be read as evidence of discipline, prosperity, marital harmony, and family order. In a Confucian society that publicly praised restraint, obvious vanity attracted criticism. The successful face therefore had to look cared for without looking loudly manufactured. This demanded subtlety, which is the expensive cousin of simplicity. By the time a pale band of daylight reaches the courtyard, the household has already revealed the central truth of elite beauty. The wearer is only one participant. Fuel warmed the floor and water. A potter made the basin. A metalworker cast the mirror. Farmers produced grain and oil. Weavers made cloth. And attendants converted materials into order. Lady Seo's privilege is the ability to stand at the center while these connections are edited from view. Yet she is also subject to the finished image. If the family prospers, her composure should show it. If grief enters the house, her clothing must acknowledge it. If money tightens, she must conceal strain without appearing deceptive. The face is private skin recruited into public service. Remembering this keeps our journey from becoming a catalog of quaint products. Every jar belongs to a social arrangement. Every comb stroke has a direction of power. The room can still be warm, companionable, and beautiful. Complexity does not remove tenderness. It simply lets the quiet scene hold all the people who made it. The word most often translated today as makeup does not map neatly onto a single Joseon category. Historical vocabulary could distinguish adorning, grooming, powder, and rouge, or the fine preparation associated with particular women and occasions. Official moralists worried that paint could conceal what nature or character had provided. An entry from the reign of Yanzangun asked, in essence, whether a complexion made pure by powder could truly be called pure. The question sounds philosophical until one remembers that somebody still had to get ready for a family visit. Joseon ideals often placed moral cultivation above decoration. A respectable woman should appear clean, harmonious, and appropriately modest, not as though she had challenged a box of pigments to single combat. Yet discouraging excess did not remove desire. It simply made beauty speak quietly. Clear skin, dark, glossy hair, balanced features, neat brows, a small touch of red, fresh clothing, and controlled fragrance could all communicate refinement while pretending not to shout. The paper door brightens another shade. Soon the mirror will reflect daylight rather than lamp, and every choice will be tested again. For now, Lady Seo remains among familiar women and familiar objects, suspended between sleeping self and household role. This brief threshold is one of the routine's quiet luxuries, a little time in which identity can be assembled slowly instead of demanded all at once. Lady Seo's routine is called extreme in our title, but not because she necessarily spends 3 rigid hours applying dozens of products every ordinary morning. No reliable ledger gives us such a universal number. Its extremity lies elsewhere, in the labor distributed through a household, in the grinding and fermenting done days before, in the hazards hidden inside admired powders, in the price and weight of fashionable hair, and in the expectation that her body should display class without appearing to chase fashion. Some mornings are simple. Illness, pregnancy, mourning, weather, ritual calendars, and household finances alter everything. On a quiet day, she may wash, smooth her hair, dress, and use almost no visible color. On a wedding or formal visit, preparation expands until clothing, hairpieces, ornaments, and cosmetics require specialist hands. Tonight, we are letting those layers unfold slowly, gathering ordinary and ceremonial practices into one long documentary journey while marking the seams between them. For now, the room remains dim. The bronze mirror waits. Steam loosens from the basin and disappears against the paper door. Lady Seo tucks her white undersleeves away from the water and takes one unhurried breath. The young attendant kneels beside a small arrangement of objects: folded hemp cloth, a wooden scoop, a covered dish of ground grain, a narrow porcelain bottle, a comb with closed teeth, and a larger comb made to travel through long hair. None resembles the bright towers of a modern cosmetics shelf. Their colors are quiet: cream powder, brown wood, pale ceramic, faded red cord. Yet each object has already traveled through other hands. Beans were dried, grain milled, wax rendered, flowers gathered, cloth boiled, ceramic fired. An effortless face has assembled an entire economy and placed it neatly beside the basin. The first product is water, and even this is not as simple as turning a silver handle. Water must be drawn from a well or carried from an approved source, stored, heated, and kept clean. In winter, the brass basin steals warmth quickly. In summer, cool water can feel like relief, but humidity encourages its own discomforts. Lady Seo begins by rinsing her hands and then her face, using a cloth or her fingers with care around the hairline. Full immersion bathing existed, and washing customs varied by season, place, health, and access, but the private daily basin was the practical center of grooming. The attendant pours rather than allowing used water to remain against the skin. A separate cloth waits for drying. In a society where clean clothing, ordered hair, and a fresh face signaled household discipline, washing was not the invisible preface to beauty. It was beauty's most defensible form, approved by health, propriety, and ordinary comfort. Water quality matters even when nobody can test it in a laboratory. Clear appearance, smell, source, and the reputation of a well-guided household choices. Water stored too long tastes flat or gathers dust. A poorly covered jar invites insects. A muddy rain requires settling and perhaps boiling for certain uses. The women do not need germ theory to prefer a clean vessel. Brass and pottery basins are scoured, ladles kept off the floor, and drinking water separated from water intended for laundry. Lady Seo's wash water has been warmed, not cooked until it is painfully hot. Excess heat reddens skin and worsens dryness. The older attendant tests it with the inside of her wrist, a gesture repeated in households far beyond Joseon, because skin understands temperature before any thermometer joins the conversation. Ground grains and beans could turn plain water into a gentle cleansing paste. Historical descriptions and museum reconstructions mention mung beans, soybeans, and red beans among ingredients used to wash pre-modern Korean faces. The material might be dried, finely milled, sieved, and stored away from damp, then mixed in the palm with water. The result would not foam like a modern bottle of surfactants. It would feel faintly sandy or silky depending on the grind, lifting oil and surface dirt as it moved across wet skin. Lady Seo's attendant adds only a little. Too coarse a powder would scratch. Too much would waste carefully prepared food. Mung bean has a mild reputation in later household knowledge, while red bean offers more visible texture. We should resist turning every old ingredient into a miracle serum. The practical effect is simpler. Fine starches and particles absorb oil and help clean. The ritual effect is equally important. The day begins by smoothing yesterday away. Grinding determines whether a cleanser feels luxurious or agricultural. Dried beans pass first through a mill or mortar, then through a fine sieve. Larger fragments return for another round. The powder can be washed and settled for greater refinement, with cloudy liquid poured away and the pale starch dried into cakes. Clean paper or cloth protects the batch from courtyard dust. On a damp day, drying too slowly risks a stale smell. Near a smoky fire, speed brings contamination. The maker balances air, warmth, and patience. A noblewoman who praises the softness of her bean wash may never have stood over the sieve, yet the softness is the maker's accuracy made tactile. Every rough fragment removed is one tiny piece of invisible service. Rice water also appears in accounts of Korean cleansing, though the exact strength and method cannot be assumed for every home. The cloudy water left from rinsing rice contains suspended starch, and in a household where rice is prepared daily, it costs almost nothing extra. Lady Seo does not bathe in a vat of precious polished rice for dramatic effect. A small portion of later rinsing water can be reserved after dirt has been removed from the grain. It is allowed to settle, then used fresh rather than treasured indefinitely. Across time, practical recipes live because they fit around existing work. The kitchen produces a cleansing water while making breakfast. A servant does not need a special journey to a cosmetics cellar. The face and the food cupboard remain uncomfortably close relatives, as they will throughout this routine. If a modern ingredient label said simply, "water in which breakfast was washed," the marketing department might request another meeting. The cleansing motion is as important as the ingredient. Lady Seo wets the face first so dried grains do not drag. Paste travels from the center outward, avoids the eyelids, and is rinsed before it dries into a stubborn mask. Around the nostrils, where powder and oil later gather, the attendant spends a little more time. The hairline receives less water because soaking it would undermine the coming style. A second rinse removes any residue that could show beneath pale powder. Then the basin water is examined almost unconsciously. Too much oil, an unusual flake or redness on the cloth may signal a change in skin or health. Grooming doubles as daily observation. In an era when a physician may be summoned late and diagnosis relies heavily on visible signs, attentive hands notice what the mirror cannot explain. There were also traditional soaps and cleansing compounds, but we should imagine a category wider than the hard perfumed bar beside a modern sink. Grain powders could be wrapped, mixed, or pressed. Plant ash and oils could produce alkaline cleaners for cloth and body. Bean-based preparations performed the work of mild facial soap. The Korean historical term jo-do is often associated with powdered legumes used for washing. Quality depended upon grinding and storage. A noble household could assign patient labor to making the mixture uniform, perhaps perfuming or blending it according to preference. The young attendant rubs a pinch between wet fingers until no sharp fragment remains, then offers it. Lady Seo presses rather than scrubs. Her goal is not the modern sensation of removing an entire defensive layer of skin. A face that feels tight and inflamed would defeat the desired appearance of calm clarity. The oldest luxury here is not rarity. It is time enough to be gentle. After cleansing, the grain paste remaining in the dish is discarded rather than saved. Water from the basin goes to an appropriate household drain or courtyard place, not onto a path where someone will slip. Cloths are separated for washing, and the mill powder is covered immediately against damp. These mundane endings matter because routine becomes sustainable only when cleanup is built into it. A product that takes 5 minutes to apply may demand much longer to make, store, and remove. Lady Seo sees a clear face. The attendant sees the next batch and the laundry basket. The scent of wet bean fades as fresh air enters through the lifted paper door outside. The kitchen lid rattles and breakfast steam rises. Cleansing has linked the dressing room to the rhythms of food preparation. Water, carrying, and fire. Nothing in the old house is truly single-purpose. A bowl can serve beauty today and medicine tomorrow, provided everyone remembers which powder it held and washes it with the seriousness ambiguity deserves. Cleanliness extended beyond the face. The neck, ears, hands, and visible wrists required attention because clothing framed them. Joseon women's jackets changed dramatically across centuries, and in the late period, a short jeogori could leave the line of the neck especially noticeable above layered collars. Hands appeared when tea was poured, embroidery lifted, or a sleeve adjusted. Lady Seo washes around each nail, checks for rough skin, and lets the attendant smooth a tiny snag that might catch silk thread. The face receives our modern attention because portraits preserve it, but social beauty lives in motion. A hand passing a cup, a clean cuff emerging from a sleeve, and hair remaining orderly after a bow could matter more in a room than the exact shape of one eyelid. Grooming therefore follows the map of what other people will see: face, neck, hairline, hands, garments, and the shoes that briefly appear beneath a full skirt. The young attendant rinses her own hands in the final clean pour. Powdered bean slips from her fingers, carrying the scent of the mill into the courtyard. No one calls the moment beautiful. It is simply clean water, pale morning, and work completed well. Yet this modest satisfaction may come closer to the Joseon ideal of ordered natural beauty than any dramatic transformation could. Drying is done by patting with clean cloth, not by standing beneath a machine that blows heated air with the mood of a small storm. Cloth itself represents work. Hemp, Ramie, or cotton must be grown, processed, spun, woven, cut, washed, and kept separate from cloth used for less delicate household tasks. A prosperous home possesses enough clean pieces to reserve some for grooming. Lady Seo's attendant presses lightly around the nose and along the jaw, then unfolds a fresh corner for the eyes. The bronze mirror shows a face a little pink from water, but the desired tone is even, not aggressively flushed. Pale, clear skin carried associations with refinement and freedom from outdoor labor, though this ideal never erased the many noblewomen who supervised estates, traveled, endured childbirth, or worked constantly within the home. Status often depends on pretending effort belongs somewhere else. The cloth in the attendant's hand quietly reveals where it went. When the basin is carried away, nothing spectacular has happened. That is precisely the point. Joseon commentary frequently position natural-looking beauty against heavy alteration. Skincare could therefore absorb ambitions that conspicuous paint could not safely display. A woman might devote considerable care to cleansing, smoothing, protecting, and brightening, then claim that the final face was simply clean. Modern language might call this a no-makeup look. The late 18th century household would frame it through different values, but the paradox feels familiar. To appear untouched, one must be touched by water, cloth, powder, oil, comb, and several opinions. Lady Seo studies the softened reflection in her mirror. The rough patch remains. History has not invented a filter for it. The older attendant reaches for a small covered jar, and the routine moves from cleansing to the more uncertain world of treatment. The small jar does not contain one standardized cream made in a distant factory. It holds a household preparation whose exact recipe belongs to the women who made it. Joseon beauty knowledge traveled through experience, medical literature, family manuscripts, oral teaching, and later compilations such as the Gyuhap Chongseo, the women's encyclopedia assembled by Yi Bing-hogak in 1809. That remarkable book addressed food, clothing, household management, agriculture, and practical remedies rather than separating beauty into a glittering commercial universe. Recipes for the complexion sit among the skills required to maintain a home. Lady Seo's jar might contain an oil and wax balm, a plant-infused liquid, or a fresh mixture intended for immediate use. We cannot assign every named recipe to every morning. Instead, the jar lets us enter a world in which skincare is perishable, seasonal, and personal. A pleasant batch is remembered. A failed batch is quietly redirected towards some less important piece of leather. Seasonal preparation turns the inner household into a small laboratory. In spring, new shoots and blossoms appear. Summer brings cucumbers, gourds, and humidity. Autumn offers seeds, fruit peel, and drying weather. Winter relies on stored oils, wax, grain, and preserved aromatics. Women schedule gathering around food and medicine because one plant may serve all three. The best citron peel becomes a gift or kitchen ingredient. Lesser pieces scent a pouch, and a small portion enters skin water. Nothing needs to be marketed as zero waste. Scarcity and labor already encourage reuse. Lady Seo's household keeps notes, but much knowledge remains embodied. How a good batch smells, how long a gourd vine liquid remains clear, and when an oil has turned before its color gives warning. One famous recipe associated with the Gyuhap Chongseo describes eggs placed in alcohol for roughly a month to create myeonji, a preparation intended to nourish a rough winter face and leave it shining like jade. The translation sounds almost luxurious until you picture 3 eggs spending 28 days in liquor at room temperature. Historical recipes often depend on techniques and expectations unlike ours, and recreating them without specialist guidance is not wise. For Lady Seo, the interest lies in fermentation, protein, fats, and the prestige of knowledge carefully timed. An attendant would mark the date, watch the vessel, and judge smell and texture. The preparation could not be summoned on the morning it was needed. Winter skin required planning before winter skin complained. When a tiny amount is spread over a rough area, the routine reaches backward through 4 weeks of waiting. Beauty is a calendar disguised as a jar. Containers change the life of a preparation. A narrow-necked bottle slows dust and evaporation but is hard to clean. A wide, shallow jar gives easy access and admits fingers. Porcelain does not react like some metals, and a tight lid protects dry powder, yet water-based contents still spoil. Small size is an advantage because the household can make fresh quantities. A spoon, spatula, or clean cloth prevents repeated dipping. These are not modern sterile procedures, but they show practical control. Lady Seo's attendants never return unused mixture from the palm to the jar. Wasteful as that seems, contaminating the entire supply would be worse. Beauty history is full of grand ingredients. Its quieter story is lids, dryness, spoons, and the decision to throw one doubtful batch away. Other facial waters, sometimes grouped under the idea of miansu, drew moisture or scent from fruits and plants. Historical summaries mention squash, sponge gourd, citron, and cucumber. A cut cucumber end might be rubbed over the face. Loofah vine liquid could be collected. Citron peel or other fragrant materials could enter household preparations. Again, methods varied and many modern claims attached to traditional ingredients travel farther than the evidence. The sensible picture is a series of mild waters used for cooling, moistening, cleaning, or pleasure. In high summer, Lady Seo may prefer a cloth dampened with cool cucumber water. In winter, she avoids anything that leaves the skin wet in cold air. The garden becomes a seasonal cabinet. Nothing has a 12-month supply chain. When the cucumbers end, cucumber water becomes a memory and the household reaches for what storage, trade, and weather provide. Comfort shapes loyalty more than dramatic promise. A cucumber water that feels cool on a hot day earns repeated use even if it does not transform complexion. A wax balm that prevents a lip from splitting during winter prayers becomes precious without erasing age. Honey softens a rough patch for an evening and is remembered fondly. Modern beauty language often demands measurable correction, but historical users also valued scent, touch, ritual, and relief. Lady Seo does not expect a gourd lotion to make her a different woman by sunrise. She expects it not to sting, not to spoil, and to leave her face comfortable under powder. Those modest expectations are surprisingly difficult to improve upon. Honey offered another familiar ingredient. Its ability to hold moisture and its long association with medicine made it suitable for masks and salves, although using it neatly required restraint. The attendant warms a trace between fingers and mixes it with another powder rather than painting Lady Seo like a ceremonial rice cake. Applied briefly, it leaves a soft film. Applied enthusiastically, it attracts hair, dust, sleeve lint, and every private regret available in the room. Honey was valuable food, so its cosmetic use also signaled means. A poor household might know the same remedy and reserve it for illness. A wealthy woman could spare a spoon for skin. Class enters the face through quantities too small for a portrait to show. The glow praised as natural may contain a fraction of the household's winter sweetness. The garden recipes also teach restraint through scale. 1 cucumber gives enough cooling moisture for a day. 1 spoon of honey can serve several small applications. A wax balm occupies less space than a plum. Historical skincare did not require a towering collection because perishable mixtures discouraged accumulation. Variety came across seasons rather than through 20 open jars at once. Lady Seo's shelf changes slowly with harvest and weather. This rhythm protects her from some excess while exposing her to inconsistency. A beloved plant water disappears when frost arrives, and the next year's batch may feel different. She learns her face through variation. The older attendant learns which changes matter and which will settle after sleep. Between them, skincare becomes less a battle against time than a negotiation with climate. The aim is not to freeze Lady Seo at one perfect age. It is to help her skin remain comfortable enough that powder lies quietly and daily duty does not feel like sand against the cheek. Plant oils and beeswax could protect skin from wind and dryness. Analysis of a brown solid cosmetic buried with the 18th century Princess Waihio identified a wax containing preparation. Material evidence that survives where recipes alone can mislead. Her tomb, discovered and excavated in the 21st century, contained a mirror, comb, writing objects, and small porcelain cosmetic vessels with residues still inside. These are intimate things to encounter after more than 2 centuries. They do not prove that Lady Seo owns an identical jar, but they anchor our imagined balm in a real royal beauty kit. A blend based on wax needs warmth from fingers before it moves. Too much looks heavy. Too little disappears into dry skin. The attendant presses it along the cheek and lips, and the scent is faintly sweet, more workshop than flower garden. A covered jar returns to the coolest corner of the room. Beside it, the household calendar marks when the preparation was made, though the notation concerns several tasks at once. Beauty shares the page with pickling, weaving, and seed. Lady Seo's face is one seasonal responsibility among many, important but never detached from the life that produces its ingredients. Medicine and beauty overlapped. The Dongui Bogum, compiled in the early 17th century, included discussions relevant to spots, complexion, aging, nourishment, and harmful cosmetics, alongside the treatment of disease. A skin mark might be read aesthetically, medically, or morally, depending upon who was speaking and how much authority they claimed. Remedies used roots, seeds, minerals, animal products, and processes that ranged from sensible cleansing to mixtures no modern dermatologist would welcome. We should not romanticize natural as automatically safe. Plants irritate, ferments spoil. Strong alkalis burn. Essential aromatic materials can sensitize skin. A noblewoman's access to more ingredients also gave her access to more elaborate mistakes. Lady Seo's older attendant trusts a simple wax balm because she has used it through many winters. She distrusts a newly praised spot remedy because the cousin who recommended it also recommends almost everything. The treated face now rests for a few minutes. This pause is part of the routine, though nobody needs to call it self-care. Lady Seo may review household accounts, ask about a sick child, listen to a servant report on cloth sent for dyeing, or simply sit while moisture settles. Noblewomen's lives were constrained by gendered space and Confucian expectations, yet they were not empty ornaments waiting to be dressed. They managed servants, food stores, rituals, textile production, marriages, correspondence, and family property under varying legal and social limits. Yi Bing Kyogak's encyclopedia itself demonstrates the range of knowledge expected within the inner household. Beauty happens beside responsibility. The young attendant removes the last trace of honey mixture, and Lady Seo asks whether enough lamp oil remains for the ancestral rites. The face in the mirror looks calm. The household behind it is already negotiating 3 budgets. With the skin cleaned and softened, Lady Seo reaches the most socially charged stage, powder. Pale skin was admired in Joseon Korea by women and men, and historical explanations connect it with status, refinement, and distance from outdoor manual labor. Literary descriptions compared beautiful complexions to white jade, snow, flowers, or polished porcelain. Yet actual people lived under sun, smoke, illness, childbirth, weather, and age. Powder offered a way to even tone and brighten what daily life refused to keep symbolic. Respectable taste preferred a finish that did not announce a mask. The attendant therefore works in thin layers, leaving some warmth in the face. This is not the flat theatrical white associated in the modern imagination with every East Asian court. Joseon ideals often praised clear, supple, naturally luminous skin. Achieving that natural luminosity may still involve a bowl of manufactured dust because beauty standards are comfortable with contradiction. Paleness operates differently across the body. The face and hands can be powdered. The neck is framed by collar. Most skin remains beneath cloth. This makes contrast manageable, but also makes mistakes obvious. If the face becomes dramatically whiter than the ears, the illusion collapses. The attendant uses leftover product rather than a fresh load near transitions, and she checks Lady Seo both seated and standing because blood flow changes after kneeling. Powder settles differently over balm, dry patches, and fine hair. The best result is not maximum whiteness. It is continuity, a complexion that seems to belong beneath the collar instead of having been borrowed from a porcelain lid. Plant and grain powders provided one route. Finely ground rice or barley could be washed, dried, milled, and repeatedly sieved. Seeds from the 4 o'clock flower known for opening late in the day were also used in pale powders. The best particles needed to be extremely fine. A coarse batch would collect in lines, catch on facial hair, and reveal the very effort it was meant to conceal. Preparation could involve soaking and settling starch, removing impurities, drying cakes, then grinding them again. The process consumed water, vessels, cloth, clean working space, and many hours of hands that rarely appear in beauty histories. Lady Seo's powder arrives in a small covered container looking innocent. It carries the labor of a servant who spent part of yesterday persuading wet starch to become something finer than flour. The phrase white jade conveys qualities beyond hue. Fine jade can be pale, translucent, softly lustrous, cool, and marked by subtle variation. To compare skin with jade praises texture, light, and preciousness, not a sheet of chalk. Joseon white porcelain offers another useful visual analogy. Its glazes are rarely sterile modern white, and the rounded vessels admired today carry warmth, faint blue or cream, tool marks, and asymmetry. Lady Seo's rice powder works best when it allows similar life beneath the surface. The attendant buffs lightly with cloth, creating softness rather than opacity. Under paper window light, the face reflects enough to appear fresh without shining like oil. Vegetable powder had limitations. Historical accounts note that it did not cling as well as mineral mixtures. Heat, humidity, skin oil, tears, or the touch of a sleeve could disturb it. The noblewoman who wished to remain serenely pale through a summer ceremony had to choose between a safer powder that wandered and a more persistent one with a troubling ingredient. Binders such as oil or other base preparations could help, but too much created patchiness. The attendant taps powder onto a puff or cloth, presses it across the forehead and cheeks, then blends toward the jaw. Clouds do not fill the room. Good powder was valuable, and inhaling it would be an unfortunate method of displaying wealth. The mirror is turned toward the window, where indirect morning light reveals the finish more honestly than the lamp. Class ideals around sun and labor are powerful, but never complete. Noblewomen traveled between households, supervised fields and stores, visited graves, endured displacement during conflict, and worked in courtyards and gardens. Poor women could also possess naturally pale skin or protect themselves from sun, while outdoor labor did not erase beauty culture. Standards simplify society more efficiently than people live it. Lady Seo's sheltered complexion advertises privilege because others agree to read it that way, not because color contains a family register. Powder strengthens the message, yet one afternoon walking under harsh spring sun can add warmth no genealogy prevents. The parasol and Eve perform status alongside the cosmetic. The more dangerous option was Yeonbun, lead-based white. Archaeology gives this subject uncomfortable weight. White powder remaining in a silver cosmetic container from the tomb of Princess Suksin appears to be lead white. Scientific work on cosmetics from Princess Wahiop's tomb has examined a white mixture containing lead carbonate and talc. Lead improved opacity and adhesion, properties that made it desirable long before anyone could explain its effects on the nervous system, blood, kidneys, and developing children. Repeated exposure through manufacturing, application, dust, contaminated hands, and household surfaces carried real risk. People could observe that certain cosmetics harmed skin without understanding invisible accumulation. Medical writing even addressed cosmetic poisoning. The extreme routine has now reached its clearest danger, a product prized partly because it performed better than the safer alternatives. When powder is finished, the attendant wipes the edge of the jar before closing it. Loose dust on the rim would escape into the drawer, coat other objects, and reveal waste. If the product contains lead, the same tidiness has an unrecognized health value, though it cannot make the material safe. A dedicated puff should be washed or replaced. Fingers must not carry powder toward food. Historical households did not follow modern hazardous material protocols, but ordinary cleanliness could reduce exposure unevenly. Lady Seo knows only that some powders feel harsher and that a sealed jar remains usable longer. The lead mixture sits apart from the rice powder, valued and distrusted. That uneasy coexistence is more credible than a room full of people either completely ignorant or perfectly informed. Human beings live for long periods between suspicion and proof. The pale face in the mirror is therefore beautiful, socially effective, technically skilled, and morally complicated. One thin finish can hold all four truths. We should be careful not to turn every Joseon noblewoman into a doomed lead enthusiast. Multiple powders existed, use varied, and surviving elite grave goods naturally overrepresent those wealthy enough to own durable containers and elaborate products. Lady Seo may use rice powder most days and reserve a more adhesive mixture for ceremony. She may distrust lead because an older relative's skin became rough. She may use it anyway because a formal visit in humid weather feels socially more immediate than a slow, uncertain harm. Human beings have never needed ignorance to make risky beauty choices. Competing priorities are enough. Tonight, the older attendant opens the opaque powder only to inspect it, then closes the lid. A family memorial requires dignity, not an experiment in endurance. She chooses the pale plant powder and accepts that it will need retouching. The plant powder may fade before noon. That impermanence is irritating and, from our distance, merciful. A safer product asks for maintenance instead of silently remaining through heat and sweat. Lady Seo would not phrase the trade that way, but the open window seems to approve. A faint breeze lifts no dangerous white cloud because the jar is already closed. Application aims for harmony rather than erasure. Powder crosses the center of the face, softens uneven areas and fades near the hairline. The neck and visible upper chest must not suddenly belong to a different person, so the remaining dust is carried downward with almost empty cloth. A tiny amount smooths the back of the hands if they will be visible. The attendant steps away because proximity encourages endless correction. From across the room, the complexion reads as even up close it remains skin. This distance test is older than photography and kinder than magnifying glass. Lady Seo tilts the mirror. One side catches the paper window light. The other remains warm in shadow. White jade, it turns out, is less a color than a relationship among powder, moisture, fabric, daylight, and expectation. Powder also makes maintenance necessary. A sneeze, a damp forehead, or a veil brushing the cheek can leave evidence. The noblewoman may carry no modern compact with hinged mirror, but a small pouch or attendant can hold what is needed for adjustment. Cosmetic containers ranged from simple wood or ceramic to silver and imported blue and white porcelain. Princess Wahiop's burial assemblage included a set of varied small vessels, most of them imported, showing that Joseon court women could admire foreign containers while using them according to local preferences. Lady Seo's own powder box is modest white porcelain with a cobalt sprig. It sits beautifully in the hand and is terrible at answering moral questions. The lid closes over both refinement and risk. Once the complexion is even, color returns in disciplined amounts. Eyebrows receive particular attention because they organize the face without appearing as blatant decoration. Paintings from Joseon show several brow shapes rather than one timeless stencil. Straighter lines, gentle arches, rising or slanted forms, thicker or finer treatments depending on period and wearer. Lady Seo's brows are brushed and lightly clarified. A mixture based on soot, charcoal, or plant pigment can deepen sparse areas. Asiatic dayflower petals and burned materials appear in historical accounts of coloring or ink preparation, but exact recipes vary and should not be treated as a single cosmetic pencil. The tool might be a fine brush rather than a stick. One stroke too dark would make the brow arrive in the room before the woman. The attendant softens the line with cloth until it looks intentional, but not argumentative. Facial balance depends on viewing distance. Brows read as separate hairs near the mirror and as one line across a room. Rouge that seems almost absent at arm's length can warm the whole face during a bow. Lip color must survive speech without becoming the only feature a relative remembers. The attendants move between close work and distant judgment. One kneels beside Lady Seo with the brush. The other stands near the paper door and narrows her eyes. Their brief debate is practical optics. The woman at the mirror sees imperfections. The woman across the room sees composition. Final authority belongs to the room. Hair removal around the face existed in many cultures, but the Joseon ideal was not the vast, shaved forehead associated with some late medieval European fashions. Neatness mattered more than dramatic excavation. Stray hairs could be plucked or smoothed, the hairline cleaned, and fine facial hair managed according to preference. Threading techniques are often discussed in broader Asian contexts, yet evidence must be tied carefully to time and place before placing them confidently in Lady Seo's hand. So we keep to tweezers, comb, and patient fingers. The work is slow because the mirror is soft and the lighting kind. This protects both dignity and eyebrows. A modern person with a ring light can remove symmetry from her face in 7 efficient minutes. Lady Seo's dim room at least gives hesitation a chance. Pigment preparation has its own economy. Safflower petals may yield color only after repeated treatment, and a concentrated red can be dried into paper-like cakes or stored in tiny vessels for later moistening. A little goes far, which makes the shallow dish sensible. Brushes require soft, even tips. An uneven hair leaves a stripe. Soot-based brow material must be free from gritty ash, while oils added for smoothness can cause spreading in summer. Each formula solves one problem and creates another. Lady Seo's attendants keep one cool weather rouge and one lighter warm weather preparation, though the difference would look negligible to anyone not responsible for preventing it from migrating toward the nose. Rouge was known as Yeonji, and safflower petals provided an important red colorant. Producing a useful pigment from flowers required collecting, processing, rinsing, and concentrating color, rather than simply crushing one cheerful blossom onto the cheek. Other mineral reds existed, including dangerous cinnabar-based material identified in research connected with Princess Hua Hiup's cosmetics. Cinnabar contains mercury sulfide, as with lead white. The historical value of strong, stable color came with hazards not fully understood in modern terms. Plant rouge could be costly and delicate. Mineral pigment could be vivid and persistent. Lady Seo's household uses a safflower preparation for ordinary color. It rests in a tiny dish like a sunset reduced to the size of a coin. Expression completes color. A lowered gaze can make brows appear straighter. A smile lifts rouge, pursed lips deepen the central red. Conduct ideals encourage controlled expression, and formal portraiture often presents composure rather than laughter. This can make historical faces seem emotionally distant. In the private room, Lady Seo laughs when the young attendant drops the brow cloth onto her own sleeve. The smile changes the entire makeup more than another layer could. Then the household bell sounds and her features settle into public calm. Cosmetics do not create one mask. They move with every version of the person beneath them. The desired cheek is not a painted circle. The attendant touches color high and lightly, then blends until it resembles warmth beneath powder. Genre paintings and formal portraits cannot give us a perfect daily instruction manual. Artists used conventions, pigment's age, and sitters were presented according to purpose. Still, the late Joseon preference is often described as restrained beside the more emphatic makeup traditions of neighboring courts. Lady Seo turns toward the window. The rouge disappears, returns when she smiles, and disappears again. This is considered success. If an observer can name the product before greeting the wearer, the product has failed its social assignment. The young attendant, who enjoys color more than philosophy, privately thinks another touch would improve everything. She is overruled by one glance from the older woman. The leftover rouge is precious enough to protect from drying. A few drops of clean water or oil may revive the working surface later, depending on the preparation, but flooding it would ruin concentration. The brush is rinsed, shaped, and laid flat so the hairs do not bend. Brow pigment receives a separate tool because mixing black and red produces an unfortunate lesson in economy. Lady Seo checks neither side in isolation now. She looks at the entire face beside the chosen clothing. The indigo skirt cools the red, jade softens the black hair, ivory brightens skin. Cosmetics are part of an ensemble rather than a painting placed above the neck. When the attendants agree, the tiny pigment dishes close. Their vivid colors vanish into dark drawers, leaving only the muted result on Lady Seo. This transfer from brilliant material to restrained appearance captures Joseon taste beautifully. The source may be intense. Refinement lies in how little is allowed to remain visible. Lips can carry a clearer red, especially for youth, weddings, or formal occasions, but the shape remains controlled. Rouge mixed with oil or wax becomes easier to spread and less drying. A small brush defines the center and softens toward the edges, giving the mouth a fresh, compact appearance. The language of cherry lips appears in descriptions of Korean beauty, though literature offers ideals rather than demographic surveys. Real lips crack in winter, fade after tea, and refuse to remain metaphors. The beeswax balm applied earlier provides a smoother base. Lady Seo presses her lips together once. No paper tissue waits to blot them. A clean scrap of cloth performs the task. The resulting red is more muted than the pigment in the dish. It looks alive rather than lacquered. One final smile confirms that color has not settled into a line. The brows stay soft, the lips remain recognizably hers, and the cheek warms without becoming a symbol detached from the person. The young attendant still favors more red. Lady Seo promises she may choose the stronger dish for the next wedding, which satisfies nobody completely and ends the discussion. Special ceremonies permit stronger signs. A bride might wear red yeonji on the cheeks and a small red gonji mark on the forehead as part of wedding adornment, accompanied by elaborate hair and formal robes. Those dots belong to a ritual visual language, not to Lady Seo's breakfast routine. Giseang and court entertainers could also use more noticeable styling shaped by profession and occasion, while royal women followed rules tied to rank and ceremony. Moral commentary often treated visible cosmetics differently depending upon who wore them, which is another way of saying that color was never only color. It could suggest celebration, sexuality, occupation, foreign influence, wealth, or disobedience. Lady Seo's faint rouge is read as healthy refinement because her status and setting teach others how to interpret it. When brows and lips are finished, the face seems remarkably plain compared with the work invested in it. This is the quiet triumph of Joseon elite taste. The skin looks clear, the brows calm, the cheeks barely warm, the lips softly red, and the dark hair waiting behind everything will provide the strongest contrast. White, black, and red form a restrained palette found repeatedly in descriptions of feminine beauty. Light skin, black hair, and brows, red lips or cheeks. But these colors are not isolated swatches. They depend upon age, health, textile, season, and light. Lady Seo looks into the bronze disc and sees a face arranged to suggest that arrangement was unnecessary. The attendants see the basin, cloths, powders, month-old preparation, flower pigment, wax brushes, and the portion of mourning that has quietly disappeared. The face is finished before the largest task has properly begun. Lady Seo's hair falls well below her waist when unbound, though length and thickness vary among real women as widely then as now. Dark, abundant hair was praised in Korean literary and visual traditions, and its condition could signify youth, health, family care, and feminine order. Hair also marked life stage. Girls commonly wore braids, while married women arranged the hair into a chignon secured with a binyeo. Ceremonial styles added structures and ornaments that transformed a private body into public rank. Today, Lady Seo's hair has been loosely gathered since sleep. The attendant removes the tie, and the weight settles across a clean cloth placed behind her. A few strands crackle from winter dryness. One has attached itself to the wax balm near her neck with the loyalty of a minor official seeking promotion. Long hair records the body's history. Ends may have grown years earlier through illness, pregnancy, poor harvest, or comfort. Broken sections reveal friction and tight styling. New growth frizzes around the hairline regardless of ideals. An attendant reading hair condition can infer whether oil is too heavy, ties too tight, or washing water too hot. She trims damaged ends sparingly because length is valuable, using sharp scissors reserved for fine work. Lady Seo hears the faint cut and feels a loss much larger than the fragment warrants. Hair invites sentiment because it is both body and material, alive in growth yet painless once cut. Hair washing is not necessarily a complete daily event. Washing very long hair consumes water, fuel, cleanser, drying time, and privacy. In cold weather, going to bed with damp hair in an unheated corner would be miserable. In humid summer, drying becomes another negotiation. Full washing may therefore follow a schedule shaped by season and household routine, while the scalp and hairline can be refreshed more often. Grain or bean-based cleansers, herbal rinses, and clear water may be used, but recipes vary. Dano, the 5th day of the 5th lunar month, became especially associated with women washing hair in water infused with changpo, sweet flag, a custom represented in late Joseon cultural memory and famous painting. Our ordinary morning is a combing day. The hair was washed earlier, dried carefully, and protected overnight. Beauty is often what happened yesterday, refusing to collapse today. Drying after a full wash is an event. Hair is squeezed, never twisted violently, wrapped in absorbent cloth, then spread or loosely sectioned in moving air away from smoke. Sun can speed the process, but may dry the outer strands. A brazier adds heat and danger. In winter, attendants may wash earlier in the day and keep the woman in a warm room for hours. A clean comb passes only after much moisture has gone, since wet hair stretches and breaks. The schedule explains why Lady Seo's washing happened yesterday. Nobody wants to begin a formal morning by discovering the lower half of a braid is still damp and has developed its own opinion. Combing begins at the ends. A broad-toothed comb loosens tangles before a finer comb smooths the surface and checks for dust or lice. Parasites were an ordinary danger in pre-modern life across classes. Noble status offered cleaner bedding, more combs, and servants to inspect the scalp. It did not create a magical boundary that insects respected. Combs of wood, horn, bamboo, or other materials could serve different stages. The older attendant divides the hair into sections, holding tension with one hand so the pull does not reach the scalp. Each pass makes a soft, dry sound. Fallen strands are gathered rather than scattered. Hair itself had value, sentiment, and potential use in added pieces. To throw it casually on the floor would feel wasteful and untidy. The small bundle in the attendant's palm is set aside as carefully as thread. Scalp care lives between washing days. The hairline can be wiped with warm cloth, combs remove dust and bedding, protects the style from household surfaces, pillows, ties, and sleep braids reduce tangling. Too much oil conceals dirt briefly and worsens it later. Fragrant powder at roots might absorb grease in some traditions, but placing every modern dry shampoo analogy into Joseon would exceed evidence. We stay with combing, cloth, modest oil, and regular washing as circumstances allow. Their effectiveness is limited and real. Lady Seo's hair does not need to be eternally pristine. It needs to remain comfortable, orderly, and ready to become a chignon without a wrestling match. Oil gives gloss and controls flyaway strands. Camellia oil is strongly associated with traditional Korean hair care, especially on Jeju where camellias thrive, though households could use other plant oils according to region and trade. Only a trace is needed. Too much would collect dust, stain collars, and make the head smell like storage. The attendant rubs oil across her palms and slides them over the outer hair, avoiding a heavy scalp application. The black surface deepens, catching a narrow reflection from the paper window. Gloss is one reason dark hair mattered so much visually. It framed the pale face and set off bright hair ornaments. A portrait may show a smooth, shining mass, but the shine is made from thousands of individual strands, patient combing, a little oil, and somebody's aching shoulders. Before the hair is lifted, the attendant runs both hands along its length and feels for any hidden tangle. This final pass is slower than combing and more revealing. Fingers find a rough knot a tooth might skip, a pin left from sleep, or a sticky trace near the nape. Lady Seo closes her eyes as the scalp gently releases tension. Loose hair offers the last uncomplicated physical comfort of the routine. Once twisted and pinned, she must remember its balance through every bow. For another breath, it is simply warm, clean, and heavy across her back. The room's light has shifted from blue to pearl. Individual strands shine brown at their edges, even though the whole mass appears black. Historical praise often flattens hair into one perfect color, but real hair holds sun, age, oil, and texture. Its beauty comes partly from those differences moving together. The attendants begin to divide it, and the river becomes 3 controlled sections in their hands. Fragrant rinses or infused oils could add scent, while acidic or herbal mixtures might alter feel and cleanliness. Yet fragrance must remain quiet. Strongly perfumed hair would conflict with the ideal of controlled refinement and could announce the wearer before protocol allowed. Lady Seo prefers the faint green scent of camellia oil and clean wood. The comb itself may be stored with aromatic materials, and clothing chests hold perfume pouches, so hair gathers traces from its surroundings even without a dedicated bottle. Smoke is more difficult. Ondol fires, kitchen work, lamps, and incense all cling to textiles and hair. A noblewoman protected from heavy kitchen smoke still lives in a world heated and lit by combustion. Historical people did not smell like nothing. Their idea of freshness existed among wood smoke, starch, oil, earth-fermented food, and plants rather than inside a fragrance-free laboratory. The comb lies across the cloth with a few captured strands. They are removed and wrapped, the teeth inspected, and a trace of oil wiped from the spine. A tool cared for after every use becomes smooth with years. Lady Seo recognizes this comb by one shallow nick near the handle, a flaw that makes it easier to trust rather than less beautiful. The hairline is smoothed with a close comb and perhaps a light application of oil or wax. Parting must be straight enough to look disciplined, but the bronze mirror reverses and softens every decision. The younger attendant holds a second small mirror behind Lady Seo, allowing an uncertain view of the back. 2 mirrors create a dim tunnel in which the 18th century room repeats itself, each reflection smaller and less useful. The older woman needs no tunnel. Her fingers know the shape through years of practice. She feels for uneven tension, checks the position above the nape, and adjusts without asking the mirror's permission. Skilled dressing is tactile intelligence. The eye judges the silhouette, but hands build it. For a moment, the hair remains loose and perfectly combed, a state too vulnerable to survive breakfast. It reaches like dark water across the cloth. This private image differs from the orderly chignon Lady Seo will present to relatives and servants. Unbound hair could signal intimacy, youth, illness, mourning, washing, or disorder depending upon context. Respectability required transformation before she crossed into formal household space. The attendants separate the lengths and prepare to braid, twist, and lift. Lady Seo rolls one shoulder, already feeling the coming weight. The face may strive to look natural. The hair has no such modest ambition. It is about to become engineering. Late Joseon fashion admired hair that looked abundant enough to have its own weather. Women could build height and volume with their own hair or add purchased and rented hairpieces known broadly as gache or dari. Added hair was braided, coiled, wrapped, and decorated until the head became a public account of money, taste, age, and marital status. Elite women were not alone in wanting it. Prosperous commoners, entertainers, and brides participated according to means, sometimes stretching household finances to do so. Official criticism complained that the cost of a fashionable hairpiece could rival essential property. Stories of gache worth the price of several houses may compress rhetoric and exceptional extravagance, but the underlying problem was real enough to provoke repeated royal intervention. When the state begins legislating your bun, the bun has escaped the category of minor personal choice. Fashion grows through comparison. A woman sees a larger coil at a wedding, hears that a celebrated entertainer has introduced a new arrangement, or receives a cousin who insists the capital has moved on. Painters capture fashionable silhouettes, but conversation distributes them faster. Hair vendors and bridal specialists carry techniques between houses. A style that begins among court women can be imitated in town. A striking entertainer's arrangement can influence elites who would never publicly cite her. Lady Seo's moderate gache exists within this circulation. It is not simply ordered from above by kings or invented privately by vain women. It develops through looking, borrowing, renting, copying, and claiming one had considered the idea earlier. The hair itself came from people. It could be saved within families, sold by women who needed money, collected through markets, cleaned, sorted by length and quality, and joined into pieces. This trade placed class directly on the body. One woman's cut hair could become another woman's elevation. Human hair required washing and careful storage. Poor preparation brought odor or pests. High-quality long black strands commanded more value because joins could be hidden and the final braid made smooth. We do not need a melodramatic secret origin for Lady Seo's piece. Her household bought it through a reputable female vendor, and the older attendant inspected it before payment. With the seriousness normally reserved for cloth, she checked color in daylight, rubbed the strands, looked for uneven dye, and asked enough questions to make the seller regret choosing commerce. Cost includes accessories and maintenance as well as hair. A large piece needs skilled assembly, stronger pins, storage, cleaning, transport, and perhaps rental fees for important days. Jeweled ornaments multiply the expense. Families could borrow money or redirect savings to meet wedding expectations, which made officials treat the fashion as a social problem rather than a harmless preference. Their criticism often placed moral responsibility on women while ignoring the family competition and marriage market surrounding them. A bride did not create the prestige contest alone. She carried it, quite literally, above her neck. Attaching the piece requires a stable foundation. Lady Seo's own hair is braided and coiled. Pins and ties distribute weight, though distribute is a generous word when the total mass still rests on one neck. The gache braid is placed, wrapped around the head, and secured so no fastening shows. The style must appear luxuriant rather than assembled. Each addition increases leverage when she turns. Heavy hair could contribute to discomfort, headache, scalp tension, and poor balance. Later, anecdotes even tell of fatal neck injury associated with an enormous bridal hairpiece, though such stories should be treated cautiously rather than repeated as routine fact. The everyday truth needs no embellishment. Carrying extra weight high on the head for hours is tiring, especially while bowing in layers of clothing, and pretending discomfort is a hobby for other classes. When restrictions redirected fashion toward jokery and smaller arrangements, the shape of beauty changed, but the labor remained. Coronet padding, embroidery, jewels, ribbons, and approved hair still required expertise. Wooden ceremonial structures could imitate earlier volume without using as much human hair. Court styles developed their own complex forms. This adaptability explains why sumptuary laws so rarely ended adornment. They alter the materials through which distinction is expressed. Lady Seo's older attendant remembers the largest styles with mixed emotion. They were splendid, profitable for skilled dressers, and deeply unpleasant to secure before dawn. Kings issued restrictions because Gache fashion was seen as extravagant, socially disruptive, and morally suspect. Yeongjo condemned costly hairpieces in the 18th century, and Jeongjo pursued restrictions while encouraging alternatives such as the jokduri, a small coronet-like headpiece associated with formal wear. Regulation did not immediately erase desire. Families rented ceremonial arrangements, shifted ornament onto approved structures, reduced one element while enlarging another, and continued negotiating fashion with authority. When expensive jeweled jokduri replaced expensive hair, officials discovered that human creativity can preserve luxury under revised vocabulary. Lady Seo's household follows the letter of the current rule more carefully than fashionable rumor suggests. Her added braid is moderate. Moderate still requires both attendants and more pins than seem emotionally healthy. A well-built style hides its fastenings without making later removal impossible. Pins enter at planned angles, ties remain reachable, and pressure is distributed away from one painful point. The older attendant has seen younger dressers secure a piece so enthusiastically that evening required a rescue operation. She prefers elegance with an exit strategy. Lady Seo tilts forward, returns upright, and turns carefully. The added braid does not slip. Its volume makes the face appear smaller and the neck more delicate, exactly the visual effect fashion rewards. Yet the material also limits movement, creating the composed behavior later praised as feminine. The style helps manufacture the posture used to justify the style. Beauty and conduct reinforce one another in a neat circle, held together by human hair and pins. Lady Seo understands none of this as theory while her scalp adjusts. She understands only that the arrangement is finished, and the relief of completion is not the same thing as comfort. Hair ornaments turn structure into message. A married woman's chignon is anchored by a binyeo, a long hairpin whose material and design reflect status, age, season, and occasion. Wood, horn, bone, metal, jade, coral, or precious materials offer different meanings and price. The decorative end might resemble a dragon, phoenix, flower, bamboo, plum blossom, or simple rounded form. Additional pins called duikoji could be placed at the back, useful and ornamental. Court ceremony allowed spectacular arrangements with phoenix pins, jade, pearls, coral, and trembling ornaments. Lady Seo is not attending a royal investiture. She chooses pale jade carved with a restrained floral head. The pin passes through the chignon, and its cool weight settles horizontally like a final line drawn through architecture. Beyond the room, royal arguments about luxury feel very far away. Here, the immediate concern is whether the left coil sits one finger higher than the right. The attendant adjusts it, steps back, and sees equality restored. Great policy and tiny asymmetry meet on one head, though only the asymmetry can be solved before breakfast. The style also changes with age and event. An unmarried daughter may wear a long braid tied with a dangy ribbon. A bride receives the most elaborate arrangement of her life, supported by specialist hands and ritual costume. A married noblewoman's everyday bun communicates adult respectability. Mourning restricts materials and color. Seasonal occasions permit particular flowers or motifs. In the inner room, these codes are learned through watching rather than reading a universal chart. The older attendant knows that one jade pin is too youthful for Lady Seo's mother-in-law and another too formal for breakfast. She reaches without hesitation. Fashion expertise resembles grammar. Fluent speakers follow hundreds of rules while insisting they are simply speaking naturally. At last, the hair is secure. Lady Seo turns her head slowly left, then right. Nothing shifts, which means success and also suggests escape will be difficult. The silhouette rises behind the face, glossy and controlled, setting off the powder and muted red lips. In the mirror, it looks serene. Outside the frame, pins press the scalp and both attendants flex their fingers. The finished head embodies the central contradiction of the routine more clearly than any cosmetic jar. Joseon elite taste praised moral restraint, yet families displayed wealth through materials and skilled labor. Officials denounced extravagance, yet ceremony required visible rank. Women were expected to appear dignified, then criticized when the equipment of dignity became expensive. Lady Seo has not solved the contradiction. She has pinned it in place. Before the visible Hanbok comes an architecture of underclothing. Exact layers vary by period. Season, status, and occasion, and modern ceremonial recreations can tempt us to imagine the most elaborate arrangement as an ordinary Tuesday. Lady Seo's late Joseon silhouette, however, depends upon more than one hidden garment. Underdrawers, petticoats, and supporting skirts protect the body, manage warmth, preserve outer fabric, and shape volume. Cotton, hemp, ramie, silk, and quilted materials answer different weather. The attendants begin with clean inner garments warmed near the ondol, a winter luxury that makes every moral argument for modesty suddenly easier to accept. Ties are secured flat so they do not create pressure beneath later layers. Each garment must allow kneeling, sitting on the floor, walking through thresholds, and using a toilet, requirements fashion paintings politely leave outside the frame. Layering is also hygiene technology. An inner jacket takes the oil and sweat that would otherwise reach silk. Drawers and petticoats prevent outer skirts from rubbing directly against skin. Detachable white collar pieces can be replaced more readily than an entire garment. When laundry requires labor, fuel, water, and drying weather, protecting expensive layers is rational. Lady Seo owns duplicates of small washable parts, not duplicates of every formal robe. The wardrobe is designed around selective cleaning. A modern observer may see many layers and think only of modesty. The laundress sees a system for deciding which layer must meet the basin. White or pale underlayers demand relentless laundering. Cloth absorbs sweat, hair oil, powder, smoke, food scent, and dust. Outer silk may be aired, spot cleaned, or carefully handled rather than plunged into water, while washable inner layers protect it. Laundering involves soaking, ash-based lye or other cleansers, beating, rinsing, drying, starching, smoothing, and mending. The dazzling clean color seen for 10 minutes at a family ceremony may represent hours beside water performed by women whose own sleeves are rolled back. Cotton became increasingly important in Joseon Korea after its earlier introduction, while hemp and ramie retained vital places. Fabric quality revealed wealth not only through purchase but through the household's capacity to keep it clean. Lady Seo's fresh underjacket smells faintly of sun even though the courtyard has not seen sun for 2 days. It was dried earlier and stored carefully. Ties distribute pressure differently from buttons or zippers. They allow adjustment through weight changes and reuse among bodies of similar size, but they can loosen, twist, or create bulky knots. The attendants flatten each end and place it where later garments will not press. Too tight beneath the chest makes breathing shallow. Too loose lets the skirt descend during a formal bow, an event likely to become family history. Lady Seo tests a full breath while the older woman watches the fabric rather than her face. Proper fit is confirmed by movement, not heroic endurance. The inner trousers give freedom beneath a skirt, but later fashion could add multiple petticoat-like layers to create the desired fullness. The late Joseon contrast was striking, a very short, fitted gyogori above and a voluminous chima below genre paintings suggest a silhouette slender across the upper body and expansive from the high waist, compared by later writers to the rounded generosity of white porcelain. The shape did not arise from one rigid Western-style corset. It was built through cut ties, undergarments, and the gathering of the skirt. Lady Seo's attendants arrange the support evenly rather than creating a dramatic bustle. When she sits, the fabric must spread gracefully rather than lifting her like a decorated tea cozy. This takes testing. She kneels once, rises, and allows one tie to be adjusted. The underlayers create sound. Fine cloth whispers, starched cotton rustles, silk slides, a padded winter garment muffles movement. Lady Seo can recognize who enters behind a screen partly through pace and clothing. A child runs with loose fabric, a servant carrying water shortens her stride, an elder's layers move slowly. Beauty has an acoustic silhouette as well as a visual one. When Lady Seo walks after dressing, the skirt should answer softly, not crackle like paper or drag across the floor. The attendants listen during the 3-step test. Nothing catches. The costume is ready because it sounds calm. Modesty and practical exposure coexisted in complicated ways. A full skirt covered the legs, but work, travel, stairs, mud, and summer heat encouraged women to gather or lift it. Paintings show working women with skirts tied high enough to reveal undertrousers, a realistic solution that moral rules could not entirely prevent. Elite women moving beyond the inner quarters might use cloaks or veils that concealed face and body according to time and circumstance. Lady Seo's indoor dressing aims for controlled coverage, yet she is not sealed inside cloth. The underlayers let her move without every shift becoming a scandal. Clothing creates privacy by giving the body room inside it. The price is heat. In humid summer, several layers become a portable climate with no ventilation committee. Once the inner layers are tied, the attendants store the rejected options rather than leaving them exposed to dust. A heavier petticoat returns to the chest because the day has warmed. A repaired pair of socks is marked for indoor use. One drawstring is replaced before it can fail. Dressing doubles as inspection of the wardrobe. Small repairs discovered now prevent public trouble later. Lady Seo cannot see most of these choices beneath the final skirt, but she feels their consequences in warmth, pressure, and freedom of movement. Hidden clothing is the foundation both literally and socially. It protects modesty, manages the body, and allows the visible garment to float free of ordinary evidence. The more successful it is, the less anyone thinks about it. In that sense, underclothing resembles servant labor, starch powder, and all the other structures tonight's story keeps bringing back into view, indispensable precisely because the finished image encourages forgetting. Season changes the whole tactile world. Winter brings quilted cotton, silk padding, fur for those permitted and able to afford it, warmer socks, and garments stored with care against insects. Summer favors fine Ramie, hemp, gauze, and open weaves that allow air to move while preserving decorum. Ramie can appear crisp and almost luminous, but producing it demands extraordinary skill in splitting plant fibers, joining threads, and weaving. A noblewoman's cool summer elegance rests on another woman's patient eyesight. Spring and autumn require adaptable layers because dawn and afternoon disagree. Lady Seo's routine tonight occupies a cool spring morning. Her undergarments are light cotton, and a thin extra layer waits in case the family memorial hall remains cold. Warmth gathers under the layers while the morning remains cool. Lady Seo knows she may regret one petticoat by noon, but ceremony favors preparation over optimism. The young attendant opens the outer door briefly, and clean air moves across the room without reaching the protected body. Inside the fabric, a private climate waits to accompany her all day. Underclothing also manages menstruation, postpartum recovery, and the ordinary functions omitted from idealized beauty. Cloth pads, ties, washing, and privacy formed part of women's practical knowledge, though the historical record preserves fewer intimate details than modern curiosity would like. Pregnancy could alter how a skirt was tied. Illness could reduce weight and change fit. Age could demand warmth and ease over fashion. Lady Seo's imagined body is not a mannequin. She has carried a child, and one side of her waist sits differently from the other. The attendant compensates without comment. Tailoring in a household familiar with the wearer can accommodate real bodies more kindly than a fixed-size label. Beauty does not erase asymmetry. Skilled clothing negotiates with it. By the time the hidden layers are complete, Lady Seo already wears enough fabric to look dressed to a visitor who has wandered into the wrong room. Yet none of it is meant to be the final view. The pale cloth creates volume below, and a clean surface above. Ties form a sequence the attendants remember in reverse for undressing. A dropped pin is found before it can hide between layers and become a small weapon during a bow. Lady Seo straightens, feeling warmth gather around her legs. Her hair remains perfectly balanced. Her face remains calm. The morning has reached the stage at which turning back would require assistance, planning, and perhaps lunch. The visible skirt comes first. Lady Seo steps into a deep indigo chima whose upper edge will sit high beneath the chest. Indigo became especially prominent in late Joseon women's everyday clothing, and genre paintings show shades ranging from pale blue to nearly black. Dyeing rich, even indigo, is a craft of repeated immersion, oxidation, rinsing, and judgment. The color emerging from the vat can look green before air turns it blue, a transformation magical enough to deserve its own quiet video. Lady Seo sees only the finished field of cloth. The attendants lift, gather, and secure it so the fullness falls evenly. Pleats and folds create shadow. When she turns, the skirt moves with a delayed, soft sweep, as though the room has taken one breath after her. Late Joseon proportions change through small alterations repeated until the result looked dramatic. Jackets shortened, sleeves and collars shifted, skirt waists rose, and the volume below grew more pronounced. Surviving garments offer precise construction evidence that paintings alone cannot. Seams reveal cutting logic. Stains show contact points. Alterations show that bodies and tastes changed. Lady Seo's jacket was let out slightly beneath one arm after childbirth, then trimmed so the alteration disappeared. It is a historical document nobody intends to archive. The seamstress's solution preserves both comfort and family pride. Color carries rank, occasion, age, and family taste without operating as one simple code. Brilliant reds and greens appear in ceremonial dress. White, jade, blue, yellow, purple, and muted tones combine across daily life. Dye materials, legal restrictions, availability, and fashion change what is possible. A noblewoman can afford a saturated hue and enough fabric for depth, but ostentation risks criticism. Indigo offers richness that can still look sober. Against it, a pale jacket appears brighter and the face clearer. Koreana's discussion of late Joseon genre paintings notes the popularity of white jackets with blue skirts, a pairing reminiscent of cobalt-painted white porcelain. Lady Seo does not think of herself as a museum comparison. She thinks the skirt from last spring has faded at one fold and hopes nobody else is as observant as she is. White collars demand a particular kind of attention because white in daily life is never passive. Korea became famously associated with white clothing, though actual wardrobes contained abundant color, and the history of white dress is complex. On Lady Seo, the small white collar frames face and hair like a narrow line of light. It must remain crisp through food, balm, powder, and smoke. The attendant carries a spare for a long ceremonial day. Replacing it privately can refresh the whole appearance without rebuilding the garment. This is the textile equivalent of retouching powder. A small clean surface persuades the eye that everything around it is equally fresh. The jeogori of this period is short and fitted, a dramatic change from the longer jackets of early Joseon. Its body may barely cover the chest, requiring secure ties and careful underlayers. Lady Seo's is pale ivory with cool blue-violet trim. Upper-class women could wear samhojang jeogori, jackets distinguished by colored sections at collar, underarm, and side areas, while less elaborate trim signaled other categories. The tiny scale of the garment concentrates attention on construction. A crooked collar or puckered seam cannot hide in acres of cloth. The attendant settles the white collar strip so it looks immaculate, aligns the front, and ties the gorium ribbons. The bow is not merely decorative. It closes the garment and sits exactly where the full skirt begins its descent. The skirt's apparent simplicity hides control of grain and bias. If panels hang unevenly, one side twists. If gathering is distributed badly, volume collapses at the back or crowds the front. The tie must account for the weight of cloth, and the hem must clear shoes without exposing too much sock. Lady Seo turns while the young attendant watches the folds open and close. Indigo makes depth visible. A lighter skirt would show every stain, a brighter one would compete with the right. This particular blue behaves like a quiet room, holding shadow and allowing jade, ivory, and skin to emerge. A fitted upper garment makes posture part of beauty. Lady Seo lowers her shoulders, lengthens the back of her neck, and keeps her elbows controlled so the sleeves fall cleanly. Confucian conduct texts placed enormous weight on embodied restraint. How one walked, sat, looked, spoke, and occupied space. A beautiful woman in literature might be praised for gentleness and composure as much as isolated features. These ideals could narrow women's freedom and turn ordinary movement into moral evidence. They could also produce a visual language of remarkable economy. A slight lowering of the eyes, a measured bow, or hands folded within sleeves communicated more than a broad theatrical gesture. Lady Seo has practiced this since childhood. Her body knows the rules, even when her mind is composing a rude opinion about them. The complete silhouette changes the space around Lady Seo. A full skirt requires wider turns and claims more floor when she sits. The short jacket concentrates every gesture near the face, while long ties and a norige introduce controlled vertical movement. Furniture in a floor-sitting room accommodates this volume better than a crowded row of high chairs would. Screens can shift, cushions can be placed, cloth spreads rather than colliding with table legs. Dress and architecture have evolved in conversation. When Lady Seo kneels near the low table, indigo gathers like water around a stone, and the pale jacket remains distinct above it. The image looks balanced because room, posture, and clothing share proportions. Remove her to a narrow modern corridor, and the same skirt becomes an argument with door handles. Beauty is always partly a successful fit between body and environment. Sleeves must balance grace with work. Too narrow, and arm movement pulls the jacket. Too generous, and tea, ink, candle flames, and soup become enemies. White cuffs reveal dirt immediately. During household tasks, Lady Seo may tie sleeves back or change garments rather than sacrifice formal cloth to practical optimism. Today she expects to greet relatives and oversee preparations, so the sleeves remain elegant but manageable. A narrow inner cuff protects the skin from rough seams. The older attendant checks that no powder has transferred from the neck onto the collar. It has. One faint mark is lifted with cloth before it settles. The natural face and the white jacket have begun their lifelong disagreement. A last pull straightens the front ribbon. The bow sits small against a vast skirt, a delicate closure bearing more responsibility than its size suggests. Lady Seo lowers her hands and lets the garment take its final shape. Cloth stops being pieces and becomes posture, age, rank, season, and taste, all without adding one spoken word. Outer layers depend upon destination. A dangi, a longer side-slit jacket used as formal dress by court women and eventually noblewomen for particular occasions, could add green silk, white cuffs, and purple ties. Royal versions bore insignia and gold decoration according to rank. A wansum belonged to important ceremonial contexts such as weddings, not an ordinary morning call. Cloaks and veils could cover a woman leaving protected quarters, with practices varying over time and class. Lady Seo adds no royal garment and does not borrow the queen's phoenixes merely because they would look impressive in the thumbnail. She wears a tasteful overjacket suited to a family rite, pale celadon with restrained trim. Historical accuracy is often the art of leaving the most spectacular item in its box. Dressed at last, Lady Seo stands as the silhouette admired in late Joseon painting. Dark voluminous skirt, short light jacket, fine collar, small ribbon, glossy hair, and a face made vivid by restraint. The upper body seems delicate, the skirt carries rounded abundance. This contrast can look timeless to modern eyes because modern Hanbok draws heavily from late Joseon forms, but it is the result of specific historical change. An ancestor from 3 centuries earlier would recognize the garment family and still find the proportions startling. Fashion loves to disguise recent invention as eternal tradition. Lady Seo smooths one fold with her palm. The indigo cloth settles. In the mirror, she no longer looks like a woman interrupted in a warm room. She looks like the household's idea of itself. A garment begins long before cutting. Silk requires mulberry trees, silkworm eggs, controlled feeding, cocoons, hot water, reeling, twisting, weaving, dyeing, and finishing. Ramie demands plants harvested and stripped, fibers split with fingernails or teeth, threads joined almost invisibly, and cloth woven with painful patience. Cotton requires fields, ginning, bowing, spinning, and looms. Hemp passes through its own laborious sequence. Lady Seo's wardrobe compresses these landscapes and working bodies into folds. Elite taste may praise the serene simplicity of one pale sleeve, but serenity is a surface condition. Beneath it lies agriculture, trade, tax, household production, and women's labor so extensive that entire seasons can disappear into cloth. Sewing takes place close to the body and often in company. Women sit on the warm floor around baskets of thread, thimbles, needles, scissors, and cloth weights. Daylight is precious. Fine stitches strain the eyes, and an oil lamp adds smoke while offering weaker colored judgment. Work may continue with stories, instruction, and gossip moving between hands. A girl's stitches reveal patience to relatives who may later evaluate her as a bride. This moral loading can make an imperfect seam feel like a personality defect. The older women know better, even when they repeat the criticism. They quietly unpick and teach. Noble households expected women to understand textiles, even when servants performed much of the physical work. A competent mistress judged thread, supervised sewing, allocated cloth, prepared ritual garments, stored seasonal pieces, and ensured family members appeared according to rank. Embroidery, patching, quilting, and making children's clothes could be markers of virtue as well as skill. Lady Seo examines a seam because the garment is both personal adornment and household asset. Silk can be unpicked and remade. A daughter's jacket may become trim. A worn adult robe yields children's pieces, pouches, wrappings, and scraps useful for years. There is little virtue in treating expensive fabric as disposable, especially when every thread remembers a silkworm in somebody's eyesight. Ramie deserves special patience. Fine Korean Ramie cloth can seem almost weightless, translucent yet crisp, perfectly suited to humid summer formality. Producing it requires splitting bast fiber into extraordinarily thin strands and joining them by hand before weaving. The labor historically fell heavily upon women in producing regions and could consume long nights. Lady Seo's cool sleeve therefore contains the opposite of ease. Concentrated, repetitive work converted into apparent air. When summer visitors praise how little the fabric seems to weigh, they are speaking only of the final object. Dyes create another map of labor. Indigo leaves must be processed into a living vat that requires knowledge and timing. Safflower can yield yellow before red with repeated washing and chemical adjustment. Gardenia fruit offers yellow. Madder and sappanwood produce reds. Persimmon tannin can strengthen and color cloth. Plant and mineral sources build a broad palette depending upon mordants and method. Exact recipes belong to specialists. The wrong water temperature or ratio wastes cloth. Even color-fast garments change with sun and washing. Lady Seo's indigo skirt shows a subtle variation where folded cloth resisted dye, evidence not of failure but of human process. Modern synthetic uniformity would look almost uncanny in this room. Repair protects memory as well as money. A scorched hem may be faced with new cloth, faded ribbon replaced, a moth hole hidden beneath trim. Garments connected with weddings, births, or elders can be preserved beyond practical value. Lady Seo keeps one child's tiny jacket inside a chest. Although no child can wear it now, its seams are uneven because she made it while tired. The object would fail a strict display of textile perfection and succeeds entirely as love. Not every item in an elite wardrobe exists for outside judgment. Some remain folded where only the household knows their beauty. Sumptuary regulations attempted to align materials and ornaments with status. Court dress followed detailed systems. Officials and their families navigated expectations about silk, gold, embroidery, fur, hairpins, and ceremonial color. Enforcement varied, and wealth repeatedly pushed against prescribed boundaries. A merchant's prosperous wife could afford something a poor Yangban family considered socially theirs by right, creating exactly the sort of anxiety for which dress codes are invented. Lady Seo's family possesses lineage and moderate income. She must look secure without appearing to compete with royal women or with a neighbor whose new silk has already generated 3 weeks of private commentary. Beauty is not a ladder with clear rungs. It is a crowded room in which everyone claims not to be looking sideways. The wardrobe ledger exists even if it is kept in memory. Which silk came as part of a marriage gift, which cloth must serve next year's rite, which daughter needs a longer jacket, and which servant is owed material form and network of obligations. Lady Seo's taste operates inside that arithmetic. She may prefer celadon silk and still choose undyed cotton because another expense takes priority. Elite rank does not guarantee endless cash. Some young band families preserve lineage while land, harvest, or debt narrows choice. Ingenuity then becomes part of elegance. Old trim moves to a new garment, faded cloth becomes lining, and one excellent ornament refreshes familiar clothes. Quiet style can be ideology, aesthetic preference, or budgetary diplomacy, sometimes all at once. The mirror cannot distinguish them. It shows only a harmonious surface, which is exactly what careful household management is meant to produce. Storage protects the wardrobe from damp, mold, insects, and smoke. Chests are lined, garments folded along familiar seams, and aromatic woods or perfume pouches placed among them. Camphor and other insect-repelling materials could be valuable. Dried herbs and careful airing also helped. On clear days, quilts and clothing emerge into the courtyard, turning household maintenance into a temporary exhibition of color. The women inspect for larvae and stains. Sunlight freshens, but too much fades dye, so attention is constant. Lady Seo's spring jacket carries a trace of the chess, incense, and cedar-like wood. That scent will later mingle with her personal fragrance, hair oil, and room smoke, producing something no perfumer deliberately composed and everyone in the period would recognize as clothing. From the service yard comes the distant double rhythm of cloth being beaten smooth. The sound belongs to another garment and another pair of hands, yet it seems to finish Lady Seo's sleeve. Textile labor continues whether or not she is dressing. The wardrobe is never complete. It is a moving reserve of fiber passing through making, wearing, cleaning, repair, and memory. Ironing as we know it had historical counterparts in heated metal irons, smoothing stones, and the famous Korean practice of fulling cloth with wooden clubs called dajumi. Women beat fabric rhythmically on a stone to smooth, soften, and add sheen. The sound traveled through neighborhoods, especially in evenings, becoming part of the acoustic world of domestic labor. A finished garment could gleam because two women sat facing each other, striking folded cloth in alternating rhythm until the surface changed. Lady Seo's skirt carries that quiet percussion in every reflective fold. What looks like luxurious stillness was made through noise. The attendants perform one final textile inspection. Threads are clipped, hems checked, skirt folds distributed, and the collar kept clear of face powder. A sachet hidden in the chest is removed before its scent grows too strong. Lady Seo lifts her arms, kneels, and walks 3 steps. The jacket remains closed. The skirt does not drag. The jade hairpin stays level. Clothing has passed its test. Across the courtyard, a servant is already opening the laundry room. The finished look will last a few hours. Its maintenance will resume before the wearer has finished enjoying it. This is why elite beauty can never be measured only in the minutes beside the mirror. The routine includes all the invisible hours required to make the mirror possible. With hair and clothing complete, ornaments enter one by one. Their scale is modest compared with a European court gown covered in gems, yet each item carries dense information. The binyeo already securing Lady Seo's chignon is practical hardware. Status, marker, seasonal motif, and piece of sculpture at once. Jade feels cool and suggests purity, refinement, and durability. Coral brings red warmth and distant trade. Silver, gold, horn, wood, and bone answer different budgets and rules. The decorative head may show a plum blossom for winter endurance, bamboo for upright character, a phoenix for high ceremony, or a simple form whose restraint is itself expensive. Lady Seo's pale jade pin is not merely flattering. It tells the room that she understands when not to wear the larger one. Knotting turns cord into structure and symbol. Decorative knots in norige must hold weight, remain symmetrical, and finish without loose ends. Silk cord is twisted, dyed, and manipulated through patterns whose names and meanings can evoke insects, flowers, or auspicious forms. The tassel below requires even lengths and a well-wrapped head. If stored carelessly, it bends, tangles, or attracts insects. An attendant straightens strands with a lightly damp hand and lets them hang before use. The moving fringe that appears spontaneous during a walk has been disciplined in advance like everything else. Smaller dewy koji slide into the back of the hair. Some are ornamental, others can serve as ear picks, comb-like tools, or practical objects disguised as decoration. A woman with an elaborate hairstyle cannot easily reach every fastening once dressed, so tools must be accessible to attendants. The arrangement must also avoid snagging a veil, catching a sleeve during a bow, or loosening the central coil. The younger attendant proposes a flower-shaped pin with a delicate tremble. The older woman removes it. Mourning family duty does not require the head to react independently whenever Lady Seo moves. The rejected pin returns to its padded box where it can wait for a wedding and feel vindicated. Jade is difficult to work. The artisan cuts and polishes an unforgiving stone slowly, using abrasives and repeated inspection. A delicate openwork butterfly represents not only precious material but time and risk. One mistake can break a wing after hours of labor. Coral travels through trade networks from sea to inland workshop. Amber carries light from ancient resin. Silver tarnishes and must be cleaned without erasing detail. Ornaments condense geography. Lady Seo's small norige places mountain stone, silk thread, metal, dye, and family memory against one jacket tie. At the front of the jacket, a norige provides the most visible ornament. Suspended from the gorium ties or waist area, it combines a central object with decorative knots, cords, and silk tassels. Materials might include jade, amber, coral, silver, embroidery, carved wood, or a practical case. Motifs wish for long life, fertility, protection, prosperity, or happiness. A 3-part samjak norigi could be particularly luxurious, while one small pendant suited ordinary refinement. Lady Seo chooses a pale jade butterfly above an indigo tassel. Against the light jacket, it draws the eye downward, linking the small upper garment to the large skirt. Every step makes the tassel move slightly, giving life to clothing otherwise governed by control. Gifts transform objects into obligations. A mother-in-law's hairpin should appear on suitable occasions. A natal family's pendant reassures and reminds. A husband's gift may signal affection, status, or an apology too material to miss. Refusing an ornament can communicate more than wearing it. Lady Seo rotates gifts carefully so nobody believes her forgetful. Today she chooses her mother's butterfly because the rite concerns her maternal kin. The selection is emotionally exact even if every observer sees only tasteful jade adornment speaks privately beneath its public grammar. Norige could hold more than symbolism. Small perfume containers, needle cases, knives, medicine, or other useful items might be incorporated into women's accessories. Practicality and beauty were not opposing categories. A beautifully knotted object was easier to value, remember, and keep close. Lady Seo's pendant contains no emergency cosmetics, but a small embroidered pouch rests beside it inside the jacket. The pouch carries fragrance and perhaps one tiny personal object. Modern clothing is famous for denying women functional pockets and then selling handbags. Joseon clothing solved the matter differently, with sleeves, pouches, attendants, chests, and hanging ornaments, none of which makes locating one urgent household key entirely graceful. Before Lady Seo leaves, each fastening receives a final touch. The binyeo is horizontal, dukoji secure, norige knot closed, pouch hidden, and ring turned so its smoothest side meets the neighboring finger. No piece should call attention through malfunction. A loose tassel or slipping pin forces the body to fidget, and fidgeting undermines the composure ornaments were chosen to enhance. This practical loop explains why trusted objects outlast fashionable novelty. The jade butterfly has the right weight. Lady Seo knows how it moves. The attendant knows its clasp. Reliability becomes part of beauty. An unfamiliar jewel may be more dazzling in its box and less graceful after an hour. The final choice favors the ornament that can be forgotten while worn. Memory remains in its history, not in constant adjustment. Earrings had a complicated history. Early Joseon elites could wear them, and even men did in some periods, but Confucian objections grew around piercing the body inherited from one's parents. Royal prohibitions and changing taste reduced the custom, though practice varied and did not vanish in one clean moment. By Lady Seo's late 18th century setting, large pierced earrings are not the obvious everyday choice for a respectable noblewoman. She may admire inherited pieces stored in a box or wear ear ornaments under particular circumstances, but tonight her face remains unframed by dangling jewels. This absence matters. Historical costume becomes more convincing not only through what appears, but through what has fallen out of fashion. The butterfly pendant settles exactly at the border between jacket and skirt. Its wings do not move, but the tassel below responds to breath. Lady Seo's mother once tied the same cord differently. The new knot is stronger, the old memory unchanged. Objects survive by accepting repair, which may be the most practical good fortune any ornament can carry. Rings and bracelets similarly depend upon era and occasion. A pair of rings might symbolize marriage or status, and materials range from silver to jade and precious stones. Yet hands used for household work could not carry a jewelry shop without consequence. Lady Seo wears one smooth ring that will not catch thread. Her wrists remain covered. The restraint directs attention back to clean cuffs, graceful fingers, and the norige. In the soft bronze mirror, jewelry does not sparkle with modern cut facets. It glows, reflects, and holds color. Jade seems almost damp in low light. Silver takes the amber tone of the lamp. Materials belong to the room rather than firing beams out of it. The finished ornaments create a small private inventory of hopes. A butterfly asks for joy or marital harmony. A bat motif, through wordplay inherited across East Asian decorative culture, can signal good fortune. Peaches suggest longevity, lotus, purity, pomegranate, many descendants. Meanings overlap and change, and owners may choose an object because it was a gift rather than because a catalog declared one interpretation. Lady Seo touches the jade butterfly once. It belonged to her mother. That fact outweighs every symbolic dictionary. Beauty objects move through families, gathering memories until material and person become difficult to separate. The morning routine is therefore not only self-presentation, it is also an act of wearing relationship. Fragrance enters late because it must not compete with cleanliness. In traditional Korean life, aromatic materials were used by women and men to scent clothing, repel insects, refresh rooms, accompany ritual, and soothe the mind. Perfume was not confined to liquid applied from a glass bottle. It lived in incense smoke, sachets, fragrant woods, dried plants, oils, and powders stored among fabric. A person carried the smell of her house as much as a chosen composition. Lady Seo's goal is not to trail a cloud through the corridor. She wants the faint impression that her clothing has been kept with care and that the air near her is pleasant. Ideally, an observer notices freshness without being able to identify its source. Fragrance obeys the same aesthetic rule as powder. Succeed, then deny the evidence. Dry perfume changes over time. Citrus peel loses brightness, clove remains assertive, woods deepen, and damp ruins everything. The household refreshes sachets rather than assuming one mixture lasts forever. Old contents can move to a clothing chest where only insect-repelling value matters. Fine powders are wrapped inside inner cloth so they do not stain silk. The embroidered outer pouch may survive many fillings, becoming familiar while its scent changes with season. Lady Seo recognizes the pouch by touch in darkness. Its fragrance is temporary, its stitching belongs to years. The Hanyang, or scent pouch, offers a portable method. Silk or embroidered fabric contains a dry mixture of aromatic ingredients selected for scent and purpose. Historical recipes and later tradition may include materials such as musk, clove, cinnamon, patchouli-like herbs, dried flowers, fragrant roots, or woods, but availability, status, and trade shaped every blend. Animal musk was rare and costly. Imported spices brought distant markets into intimate clothing. Local herbs might repel insects as well as smell fresh. Lady Seo's pouch uses a restrained mixture centered on clove, dried citrus peel, and aromatic root. We should treat this as a plausible reconstruction, not the universal Joseon formula. The pouch is small enough to warm against fabric, releasing scent slowly as she moves. Room fragrance follows airflow. Paper doors and wooden lattice allow a house to breathe more than sealed modern construction, though winter weather encourages closure. Incense burned too near a screen leaves soot. Too far from clothing and its effect vanishes. An attendant places the burner low, watches the ember, then opens a door enough to draw smoke through rather than letting it gather. This work resembles cooking with an invisible ingredient. The room is ready when no plume remains and only a faint dry sweetness clings to wood. Incense perfumes space and cloth indirectly. A small burner may hold chips, pressed incense, or powdered material over a controlled ember. Agarwood was extraordinarily precious. Sandalwood and other aromatics traveled through trade. Local woods and plant mixtures served more ordinary needs. In Buddhist settings, incense carried ritual meaning, while Confucian ancestral rites also used aromatic offerings and smoke. The Joseon state officially privileged Neo-Confucian practice, but daily aromatic culture did not reduce to one doctrine. Lady Seo's room was aired before a brief, mild incense burning. The burner is now covered and removed. Smoke softens into the woodwork. Leaving it active beside silk sleeves, hair oil, and a wooden house would be less soothing and more an invitation to architectural history. Personal preference survives inside rules. Lady Seo dislikes animal musk, even though its rarity impresses others. It feels heavy in warm weather and reminds her of a formal visit that lasted through an afternoon. She prefers citrus peel because it evokes winter fruit shared with her children. Another noblewoman might choose clove, sandalwood, or a floral blend. Historical categories cannot flatten scent memory. Two women following the same standards may smell different because biography selects what fashion merely offers. Wardrobe scent works over days. Perfume pouches rest in chests. Fragrant paper or wood separates garments. Insect-repelling materials guard valuable fabric. The resulting smell is dry and quiet, unlike a wet spray. When Lady Seo's indigo skirt warmed on her body, it released traces of storage, sun, starch, and aromatic plants. Her hair carries camellia oil. Her skin balm smells faintly of wax. The room adds paper, pine, and last night's smoke. The scent pouch is therefore one voice in a household chorus, and the skill lies in keeping every voice low. Modern perfumery often asks for distinct top, middle, and bass notes. Lady Seo's composition has courtyard, chest, sleeve, and fire. Scent is tested at the distance of conversation. The older attendant stands one arm away, then near the doorway, while Lady Seo moves past. Close to the pouch, clove is clear. At the door, only dry warmth remains. That gradient is the desired result. A relative leaning in during greeting may recognize fragrance. A servant across the hall should not. The test also accounts for heat because scent will strengthen as clothing warms. Morning restraint prevents afternoon excess. Once satisfied, the attendant wraps the unused mixture and labels it through a colored thread understood within the room. No written perfume name is necessary. One knot means winter citrus, another the stronger ceremonial blend, and everyone who manages the chest remembers. Household order turns color and texture into an information system hidden from the guest. Body odor was managed through washing, clean undergarments, airing, powder, and seasonal practice before fragrance attempted concealment. Elite people did not avoid bathing as a universal principle, nor did they live in constant clouds of incense to disguise an unwashed world. Access and frequency varied, but water culture, medical bathing, public customs, and household washing all existed. At the same time, full body washing required more work than it does now, and heavy layered clothing in summer produced sweat. Fragrance could refresh without replacing the basin. Lady Seo's attendant checks the undercollar and hairline because those reveal heat first. If a garment needs changing, another sachet will not negotiate a truce. The incense ember is cold before the burner leaves the room. An attendant checks it twice, because a serene fragrance is not worth a burning house. The covered bronze vessel passes into the corridor, taking visible smoke with it. What remains is only the softened room, scented lightly enough that memory may later mistake it for the natural smell of morning. Some aromatics also carried medicinal claims. A pouch might be believed to repel harmful influences, insects, or illness. Ingredients could be chosen for warming, calming, or protective qualities. The line between scent, medicine, and charm was porous even in an officially rational Confucian household. People can respect learned medical theory, perform ancestral rites, consult practical experience, and still prefer the pouch who's not an ant tied for protection. Lady Seo's butterfly norige hangs beside a scent bag embroidered with a long-life character hidden on the inner side. The writing is not visible to visitors. Its work, like the fragrance, is meant to be felt rather than displayed. The older attendant lifts the pouch near Lady Seo's shoulder, waits, then removes half the mixture. This is the final edit. Too much clove would dominate tea and announce itself to the mother-in-law, who regards strong fragrance as evidence that younger women have insufficient duties. The reduced pouch disappears inside the jacket. Lady Seo crosses the room once. The air changes only when she passes. What remains after her is not perfume in the modern sense, but a brief impression of warm silk, dry citrus, and wood. The routine has now addressed the senses one by one. Pale balance for the eye, smooth cloth for touch, near silent ornaments for hearing, and scent kept at the edge of attention. A beauty routine that ends at the jaw would have made little sense. Teeth, breath, skin, feet, posture, and clothing all shaped how a noblewoman was experienced. Dental care in Joseon Korea drew upon water rinsing, cloth or finger cleaning, salt, plant materials, powders, and small implements. Though precise practice varied in surviving texts often preserve medical advice more readily than an ordinary woman's morning habit. Lady Seo rinses after waking and cleans her teeth with a fine salt-based powder used cautiously, then rinses again. A twig brush or cloth can remove residue. This is not modern fluoride dentistry, and decay, gum disease, lost teeth, and pain remain common. Wealth improved diet variety and access to treatment while also providing more sugar, honey, and refined foods with which to create expensive problems. Hair, body, and clothing schedules must cooperate. A full bath on the same morning as an elaborate visit creates too many drying and dressing tasks. Laundry days need clear weather. Menstruation may require more cloth and water. Illness changes who can enter the room. The older attendant keeps this calendar without displaying it. She knows when Lady Seo's winter balm is nearly empty, which Busan pear has a weak toe, and whether there is enough charcoal to heat bath water without depriving the kitchen. Personal care is household logistics conducted at the scale of skin. Breath could be freshened with rinses, tea, aromatic seeds, fruit, herbs, or careful chewing materials. Household manuals discuss food and digestion because internal condition and outward presentation were connected. Lady Seo drinks a little warm water and later takes mild tea, avoiding an aggressively scented seed that would wage war against breakfast. Stomach illness, dental infection, dry mouth, and fasting could all alter breath beyond the reach of perfume. The ideal of a fragrant mouth appears in beauty traditions, but the practical foundation is clean teeth and a healthy body. Goals historical medicine pursued with uneven success. A noblewoman with chronic tooth pain might still smile gently because public composure did not pause for molars. Dental pain reveals the limits of status. A physician may offer herbal rinses, cautery, extraction, dietary advice, or remedies preserved in medical tradition, but there is no local anesthetic appointment followed by a neat restoration. Losing a tooth changes eating, speech, and facial shape. Lady Seo cleans carefully, partly because an elder's long toothache remains vivid in family memory. She does not possess modern prevention, yet she possesses motive. Salt is used lightly because vigorous abrasion harms gums. Warm water is preferable when one tooth reacts to cold. The routine adapts around discomfort the official portrait will never show. Bathing took several forms. A full warm bath required vessels, heated water, a private space, towels, fuel, and people to carry everything away. Partial washing at a basin was far easier and likely more frequent. Seasonal river or festival customs, therapeutic baths, childbirth care, illness, and preparation for ritual added other occasions. In a prosperous household, a large wooden tub could be filled behind screens. The water cools with every trip across the courtyard, so attendants coordinate. Lady Seo's weekly rhythm may include one more complete washing day, adjusted for menstruation, health, season, and schedule. Tonight's morning follows such a bath from the previous evening, which is why her long hair is clean and dry. The effort has merely moved off-screen as beauty effort prefers to do. Feet carry every elegant decision. Layered skirts hide stride, but they do not lighten the body. Indoor floor sitting asks ankles and knees to fold repeatedly. Hair weight changes balance. Soft shoes provide little structural support. Stone courtyards punish inattention. At night, an attendant may massage Lady Seo's feet with warm hands or a trace of oil, inspect blisters, and mend sock seams. This is beauty care because tomorrow's controlled walk depends on it. Grace often begins where nobody is looking. Bath additives might include mugwort, sweet flag citrus peel, or other botanicals chosen for scent, comfort, or medicine. Strong decoctions could irritate, and the exact historical use of each plant varies, so Lady Seo's household keeps the mixture simple. Mugwort steams in a cloth bag during a postpartum bath for another woman. Citrus peel floats in winter water. Plain warm water serves perfectly well most days. Soap-like cleansers remove oil from hands and body, but precious hair oil is applied again afterward. Bathing and grooming form a circle in which one carefully removes what one later carefully replaces. The body routine ends with food rather than another product. An empty stomach weakens posture, sharpens fatigue, and makes fragrance no substitute for breakfast. Lady Seo eats rice, soup, and small side dishes appropriate to household and season after the first formal preparations permit. She protects her lip color by taking modest bites, which is inconvenient and temporary. Tea or water follows, and a cloth repairs the mouth if needed. Beauty manuals can make the body sound like an exterior surface, but skin, hair, teeth, and energy depend upon diet, illness, sleep, pregnancy, labor, and age. Elite access to varied food offers advantages without guaranteeing health. The calmest beauty advice in the room is therefore to eat, rest when possible, and stop using the jar that burns. It is not dramatic enough for a royal decree and sensible enough to survive centuries. Hands receive balm because they disclose labor and age. Beeswax and plant oil protect knuckles from cold. Gloves or hand coverings may help outdoors. Sleeves shield skin from sun. Yet noblewomen worked constantly with thread, paper, food, medicines, and keys, even when they avoided field labor. Needle pricks, ink stains, rough fingertips, and small burns disturb the fantasy of untouched hands. Lady Seo has a callus where embroidery scissors rest and a faint mark from a kitchen lid she lifted without waiting. Powder cannot transform either into a lily. The balm makes them comfortable, which is a better achievement. Lady Seo flexes her fingers, rolls each shoulder, and takes 2 easy steps in her shoes. Nothing hurts enough to change. That modest test matters more than the mirror's approval. A routine meant to support public composure must first permit the body to reach the public room. Beauty that prevents walking has misjudged its assignment. Feet are washed, nails trimmed, and socks changed. Traditional Biusin socks shape a curved line and fit within shoes that vary by status and occasion. A noblewoman's decorative footwear may be embroidered or made from fine materials, but indoor life on heated floors often means removing shoes at the threshold. Clean socks therefore become publicly visible in a way modern street shoes hide. Their seams must sit correctly, or every step rubs. Lady Seo's shoes, with gently upturned toes and muted embroidery, are placed facing outward so she can step into them without turning awkwardly at the door. The young attendant tucks one lace and wipes an invisible speck from the sole. Shoes close to the ground require humility from everyone except the shoes. Posture ties the whole body together. Health manuals, conduct texts, dance, ritual, and repeated family correction shape how Lady Seo sits and moves. She does not glide because women in the past possessed different bones. She glides because her skirt limits stride, her hair discourages sudden turns, her shoes demand care, and she has practiced controlled motion since childhood. Beauty is partly biomechanics produced by clothing. The first steps after dressing are slow. By the third, balance returns. A tassel moves, the skirt follows, her shoulders remain low, and the scent pouch gives one breath of citrus. Face, hair, garment, ornament, and body have finally agreed on the same tempo. Lady Seo's beauty is a collective achievement. The attendants who wash, comb, tie, launder, grind, sew, air, and store are not accessories to her story. They possess expertise. One understands how much water a starch powder can take before it becomes paste. Another can secure a hairpiece by touch. A seamstress knows where a fitted jacket must yield so the wearer can breathe. A laundress distinguishes a stain that needs sun from silk that sunlight will ruin. Their social positions vary. Enslaved or formerly enslaved household workers, paid servants, relatives of lower rank, specialist craftswomen, and vendors may all contribute across different households and decades. Official records preserve fewer of their names than of the people who wore the results. The mirror, however, is crowded with their hands. Skill creates bargaining power even within unequal relations. A servant renowned for bridal hair may receive gifts, introductions, or requests from neighboring houses. A talented seamstress can negotiate time and materials. A trusted attendant controls access to the mistress's private room and knows which products are actually used. Knowledge of vendor values. None of this erases bondage, class hierarchy, or vulnerability, but people make room inside structures where they can. The beauty economy is not only something imposed upon women, it is also a field in which women build expertise, reputation, and networks. Cosmetics made at home required clean work areas and disciplined storage. Grain was washed repeatedly, dried away from smoke, ground on stones also used for food unless reserved, and sieved through cloth. Rouge demanded flour processing at the right season. Oils turned rancid if exposed to heat and air. Water-based lotions spoiled. Ceramic jars had to be washed, dried, labeled through memory or marks, and kept from curious children. Small quantities reduced waste and risk. Lady Seo's older attendant opens each container and smells before use. This sensory quality control lacks laboratory certainty but reflects deep practical knowledge. If the surface changes, the jar is discarded. Nostalgia should never require applying suspicious fermentation near an eye. Recipes migrate through those networks. A daughter carries a household method into marriage. A servant learns a balm from her previous mistress. A palace woman released from service may influence dress or speech beyond the gates. A vendor hears that one powder cakes in summer and adjusts the next batch. Written compilations capture a portion after practices have already circulated orally. When Yibing Hogak records household knowledge, she does not create women's experimentation from nothing. She gives durable form to a world of testing that had long passed from hand to hand. Specialist vendors extended the household's reach. Peddlers could sell powder, rouge, combs, pins, mirrors, cloth, and small necessities, carrying news along with goods. Historical commentary mentions cosmetics sellers and the expansion of products beyond courtly circles in later Joseon. A trusted woman vendor might enter the inner quarters where an unrelated man could not, spreading fashion through conversation. She displays powders in covered packets, Safflower rouge, a horn comb, and 2 hair ribbons of supposedly unmatched dye. Her claims are as old as commerce. One powder will adhere through summer, one oil will restore hair offended by winter, one ribbon is the exact shade worn in a household prestigious enough to remain unnamed. The attendants listen with the serene skepticism of customers who will still buy something. Credit remains uneven. The noblewoman's name may attach to a recipe she favored. The servant who improved its texture disappears. A court bureau records items delivered, not the woman who prevented a batch from spoiling. Paintings label artists, not dressers. Our imagined attendants cannot repair every silence by receiving invented biographies. Better to acknowledge the boundary. We can see their labor and results, infer skill from complexity, and refuse to treat them as furniture. Their exact jokes, ambitions, and names remain beyond the paper door. Male artisans and official workshops also shaped the routine from beyond the women's quarters. Potters fired cosmetic vessels. Metalworkers cast mirrors and pins. Lacquer specialists built stands and boxes. Dyers prepared cloth. Weavers created silk. Carvers shaped jade. Papermakers supplied wrapping. Farmers grew every plant ingredient. Court bureaus procured clothing and personal items for royal use, and records mention powder, rouge, puffs, needles, and cosmetics among distributions or purchases. Noble households relied on markets and networks rather than manufacturing an entire material world behind one wall. The intimate face at dawn was connected to kilns, mines, fields, workshops, roads, tribute, and trade. When the dressing room empties, the young attendant briefly opens the mirror again. She checks the ribbon at her own braid and rubs one remaining trace of balm onto a dry knuckle. This is not theft. The older woman left it deliberately, rather than scrape the dish clean into waste. Beauty materials circulate in tiny allowances. A servant may receive worn clothing, leftover thread, a broken ornament that can be repaired, or a spoon of a successful preparation. Such gifts can express care and hierarchy at once, because generosity confirms who controls the supply. The young woman understands both meanings. She straightens, closes the mirror, and carries the basin out. Her reflection lasted only seconds, but she too will appear before other eyes today, and she too prefers her ribbon to sit correctly. Payment reveals the routine's hierarchy. Lady Seo's family spends money on imported porcelain, good indigo, clean oil, and skilled sewing. But the servant's time may be treated as an ordinary household resource rather than a luxury expense. This is how elite simplicity becomes possible. Labor disappears from the price perceived by the wearer. A hair arrangement described as natural may require an hour from two women whose own hair was tied in minutes before work. A spotless white collar requires another person's hands in cold water. The beauty standard does not simply tell Lady Seo how to look. It organizes whose effort counts as visible. The attendants close the door behind them and divide the next tasks without ceremony. One carries cloth to laundry. One alerts the kitchen that Lady Seo is ready. Another returns an ornament key. Their work branches away from the mirror into the entire house. The finished face is not the end of labor, only the point where labor changes rooms. The attendants have beauty lives of their own. They save a little camellia oil, tie a bright ribbon on a festival day, shape brows, wash with bean powder, trade recipes, and judge the household's fashions with precise internal reviews. Class limits materials and time, not desire or aesthetic intelligence. A young servant may understand current hairstyle better than the mistress because she builds it. A laundress may choose colors brilliantly in her private clothing even while working in plain cloth. To imagine elite women as the only historical subjects of beauty would repeat the mirror's narrow angle. Lady Seo's finished face is one point in a larger culture of grooming shared, adapted, criticized, and enjoyed across society. After the morning preparation, the tools are not abandoned like props after a scene. Brushes are cleaned, damp cloths go to washing, powder lids are sealed, hair combs are wiped and checked. The bronze mirror is lowered into its stand, which closes over the drawer. A list is made of rice powder remaining, Safflower rouge needed before the next wedding, and a cracked jar that can no longer hold liquid. The young attendant carries the basin away. Her sleeves smell of bean cleanser and camellia oil. For the rest of the household, Lady Seo will soon appear composed and nearly effortless. For the women in this room, Effortless has a full inventory. An ordinary noblewoman's mourning can be restrained because ceremony stores the excess for later. A wedding is the great exception. The day when a woman may wear forms of dress and adornment otherwise associated with ranks above her own. Preparation begins well before dawn and often involves a sumo, a specialist who dresses the bride, arranges hair, applies cosmetics, and may rent the necessary ornaments. This expert carries not only tools but composure. Families are anxious, clothing is unfamiliar, relatives offer incompatible advice, and the bride must sit still while becoming a symbol of two lineages. Lady Seo remembers her own wedding as a sequence of sleeves, hands, and instructions. She remembers almost nothing about breakfast. The bride's stillness is work. She may have slept poorly, eaten little, and listened for hours while older relatives discuss her future as though she were ceremonial furniture with excellent hearing. The sumo asks her to lift her chin, relax her shoulders, and stop touching the lip color. Beneath the formal robe, sweat gathers despite cool weather. A maid places a cloth where it cannot be seen. Beauty at the wedding is designed for witnesses and memory, not bodily comfort. The bride performs endurance as serenity. Bridal hair could include elaborate gache, a yo-yo-style arrangements, large ceremonial structures, jokduri, ribbons, and many hairpins depending on date and family. Regulations try to restrain expensive rented hair and jeweled coronets, yet records show continued use and adaptation. On such a day, the head might carry dragon or phoenix pins, bright silk, pearls, coral, jade, and gold-toned ornaments. The bride's own neck remained responsible for the entire debate. A specialist distributed the weight, then taught her how far to bow without allowing ornament and floor to become acquainted. Lady Seo's present moderate chignon feels merciful by comparison. Rental makes magnificence available while creating anxiety. Hairpieces, coronets, embroidered robes, pins, and ceremonial objects may pass through many weddings. The specialist records every component and knows which mother will inspect for damage. Shared use spreads styles across families and makes luxury less dependent on outright ownership. It also means a missing ornament can end a beautiful day with a very practical argument. Lady Seo remembers the count after her wedding. Pins, ribbons, pendant, shoes, robe, and one borrowed coral piece everybody feared had vanished until it was found inside a folded sleeve. Bridal makeup permitted clearer red, yonji touched the cheeks, rouge colored the lips, and a small red ganji marked the forehead in the familiar traditional wedding presentation. Powder brightened the face beneath a coronet or hair arrangement. The goal was not individual experimentation, but ritual transformation. Maiden into bride, daughter into member of another household. Private person into visible link between families. Strong color helped the face remain legible within formal robes and layered headwear, yet even here application required balance. The sumo knew that a bride already flushed by heat and fear did not need to be painted as though winter itself had issued a challenge. After the ceremony, transformation reverses. The heavy arrangement is removed, red marks washed, rented robe folded, and the exhausted bride returns to a simpler face while her social identity remains changed. This contrast can feel abrupt. Hours of preparation produce a public image that exists briefly, then survives in description and objects rather than photographs. Memory edits discomfort first. Years later, Lady Seo remembers the red of her sleeves and her mother's hands near the collar more clearly than the ache beneath the jokdure. The wansam, a long ceremonial robe, offered broad sleeves and brilliant color, often worn with embroidered bands and formal insignia according to context. A bridal version could allow ordinary women a temporary echo of courtly magnificence. Beneath it, the familiar skirt and jacket remained, joined by layers that increased warmth and restricted movement. The robe spread around the bride when she knelt, turning one body into an island of cloth. Decorative shoes, embroidered socks, a ceremonial headpiece, and hanging ornaments completed the view. Every object had to arrive together and return to its owner if rented. Weddings have always combined emotion with inventory control. Ceremonial beauty succeeds through rehearsal. The bride practices bows in simpler clothing, learns where to place hands, and discovers how long sleeves respond. The dresser tests pins before the wedding morning. Family women prepare emergency thread, powder, cloth, and fastenings. Food is arranged so pigment and sleeves have a chance of surviving. These preparations reduce visible interruption during the rite, making a complex performance appear timeless. Guests see inherited custom, women backstage see contingency planning. Lady Seo now uses the same knowledge for smaller family ceremonies. She carries spare collar cloth and one pin, not because she doubts tradition, but because tradition rests more comfortably when somebody anticipates gravity. Other rites demanded different restraint. Ancestral ceremonies prioritized clean, correct clothing, and controlled hair rather than bridal brilliance. Mourning replaced color with plainness, limited ornaments, and altered grooming according to relationship and stage of ritual. Birth celebrations, coming-of-age observances, seasonal festivals, royal audiences, and family visits each carried expectations. A noblewoman did not own one fixed beauty look. She owned a repertoire governed by calendar and kinship. Choosing the wrong pin could be less a fashion error than a failure of respect. Lady Seo's attire this morning is meant for family remembrance. Clear face, quiet rouge, jade rather than coral, indigo and ivory, fragrance nearly absent. The routine has been long precisely to make solemnity look simple. Somewhere a drum, a courtyard call, or the stir of relatives announces that ceremonial time has begun. The dresser gives the bride one final look, not as artist, but as protector, checking what may loosen and what may frighten her. Then she steps aside. The image belongs to the families now, while the weight remains with the young woman inside it. At court, ceremonial clothing reached far beyond Lady Seo's experience. Queens and crown princesses wore pheasant-patterned robes for the highest occasions, supported by underrobes, belts, pendants, jade pieces, formal shoes, and regulated head ornaments. Surviving examples from the late royal and imperial period show how completely rank could be constructed around the body. But a provincial noblewoman could not decide that the phoenix suited her mood and borrow royal insignia. The beauty of court dress depended upon exclusivity. law, and ritual order. Our visual plan therefore keeps queens in their proper chapter and does not dress every elegant woman as one. Historical fantasy often gives everybody the best wardrobe. History itself was much less generous. Lady Seo's wedding memories fade back into the present room. The sumo who dressed her years ago is likely preparing another bride somewhere in Hanyang, tightening another ribbon while two families attempt serenity. The Gache restrictions have altered fashion, but desire has migrated into jewels, fabric, and approved headpieces. No law has removed the wish to make one day beautiful enough to carry in memory. Lady Seo touches the edge of her pale collar. Today's rite is quieter, yet it relies on the same principle. Clothing and grooming help the body enter a role larger than private feeling. The face becomes calm so the ceremony can be seen through it. Much of tonight's routine comes from texts and paintings, sources that tell us what writers advised, officials criticized, artists selected, or families wanted remembered. The cosmetics buried with Princess Hwayhayop offer something more direct. Matter that once touched an 18th century royal woman's life. Born in 1733 as a daughter of King Yeongjo, she married young and died in 1752. Archaeologists excavating her original burial site between 2015 and 2017 found identifying objects, writing tools, a mirror and case, comb, and a cosmetics set whose small vessels still held residue. The assemblage does not let us watch her mourning, it gives us the silent objects that survived it. Conservation science treats residue with a care its original user could never imagine. Researchers sample tiny amounts, examine crystals, identify elements and organic compounds, compare recipes, and attempt reproductions to understand texture and performance. Their goal is not to recommend antique makeup, but to learn how it was made and used. A powder can reveal talc, lead compound, oil absorption, or particle size. A brown lump can preserve wax. Material analysis turns an object from a pretty container into evidence of technology and daily choice. Researchers examine powders, red pigment, brown solid material, and liquids. Studies connected with the National Palace Museum of Korea reproduced white powder containing lead carbonate and talc, and red powder based on cinnabar, while analysis of a brown solid pointed to beeswax and other material. Some containers preserve substances too altered for easy interpretation. This scientific work complicates the comforting story that traditional cosmetics were always gentle plants from a kitchen garden. Royal skincare could include wax, natural colorants, imported vessels, and toxic minerals side by side. Natural, artificial, local, foreign, medicinal, and decorative were not neat opposing shelves. They shared one box. Reproduction also exposes practical qualities. Experimental powders may spread well or absorb oil in ways surprisingly comparable to modern products while failing present safety standards. This dual result resists easy storytelling. Historical cosmetics were not crude simply because they were old, and technical effectiveness did not make them safe. Makers optimized adhesion, color, texture, and storage with the knowledge available. The same intelligence that produced a fine powder could not see chronic lead accumulation. Skill and danger can occupy one formula without canceling each other. The containers themselves traveled. Research on the Hwayhayop burial set found that most of its small blue and white porcelain vessels were imported from China or Japan, with one associated with a Joseon court kiln. Their forms were selected for local cosmetic use, even when makers abroad intended similar objects differently. This is a lovely reminder that cultural borrowing is not passive copying. Joseon court women could desire imported porcelain, place Korean preparations inside it, and arrange a kit according to local habits. Lady Seo's smaller domestic box echoes that world at a humbler scale. The cobalt sprig on her powder jar does not turn her routine Chinese or Japanese. It shows that private rooms are connected to regional exchange. Burial changes meaning. The cosmetics placed with a princess were no longer supplies for tomorrow. They became part of mourning, identity, and care for the dead. We do not know the full intention behind each object. Perhaps familiar belongings represented status, affection, or expected continuity beyond life. Perhaps the box was simply appropriate for a royal daughter. The surviving powder is moving because it crossed that threshold. A beauty routine designed for repeated renewal became still for centuries, awaiting people who would open it under entirely different light. Princess Suksan's tomb provides another intimate object, silver cosmetic containers, one with white powder still present and interpreted as lead white. Court records add quantities without preserving faces. The veritable records mention distributions of powder, rouge, puffs, needles, and related goods. A quotation from 1429 lists hundreds of puffs and needles alongside powder jars, suggesting organized procurement rather than one woman's improvised vanity. Another 15th century record describes powder and rouge being given with needles and cloth items. Such entries are brief because administrators cared about supply. For us, their very dullness is valuable. Beauty had budgets, counts, offices, and inventory. Museum display changes scale again. A small jar once opened in the hand now sits behind glass beneath labels, climate control, and focused light. Visitors lean close, searching for a dramatic secret, while the object's power lies in its ordinariness. It held powder. Somebody used it. The lid fit. Archaeology gives daily life a second audience the original owner never requested. Responsible storytelling should return some privacy by resisting sensational invention. We can describe lead, wax, cinnabar, imported porcelain, and court practice. We cannot claim Princess Hwa-hyop stared into her mirror with Lady Seo's thoughts. The fictional noblewoman lets the script create continuity without placing imagined words into a real young princess's mouth. Evidence remains evidence, and imagination remains clearly framed. Paintings fill in gesture. Shin Yoon-bok's late Joseon women wear short jackets, deep skirts, neat hair, lowered faces, and accessories that reveal class and fashion. His famous portrait of a beauty presents a woman with glossy arranged hair, delicate features, pale jacket with colored trim, dark skirt, and a red ornament at her side. She is often discussed as an embodiment of a Korean feminine ideal, though her precise identity remains debated. She does not offer a candid photograph. She offers one artist's highly skilled construction of presence. Still, the combination of painting, garments, combs, mirrors, containers, recipes, and residues lets our imagined room gain depth. The museum label can name dynasty, material, dimensions, and excavation, but not the sound of the lid in its original room. Our imagined routine lends that sound without claiming certainty. Porcelain touching porcelain. A comb returned, silk folded around a box. History often lives in the small sensory gap between what an object proves and what respectful imagination allows us to wonder. Evidence also establishes limits. A recipe compiled in 1809 cannot automatically describe a 15th century court. A late genre painting cannot prove what a secluded noblewoman wore in every province. A royal tomb cannot represent a servant's pouch. Modern brands that draw inspiration from Joseon ingredients are not unchanged survivors of the princess's formula. They are modern products shaped by current chemistry, regulation, marketing, and taste. Respecting history means allowing the old routine to remain partly strange and incomplete. Lady Seo is a bridge through evidence, not a hidden person we claim to have discovered. The little vessels are most moving when we stop asking them to advertise continuity and let them remain personal. A lid was lifted. Powder clung to an edge. A mirror rested in its case. A comb lost a tooth or did not. Somebody wrapped these objects and placed them beside a young woman who would not use them again. The residue survived because the box closed. Tonight, our imagined attendant closes Lady Seo's porcelain jar with the same ordinary finality. She cannot know that future researchers may care about such things. She only knows moisture is bad for powder and the lid must fit. Lead, white, and cinnabar make the title's word extreme more than playful. Lead can enter the body through dust, contaminated fingers, ingestion, or manufacturing exposure, and chronic poisoning may damage multiple organs in the nervous system. Mercury compounds carry their own hazards. The historical users did not possess our toxicology, yet they were not incapable of noticing harm. Irritated skin, discoloration, weakness, or illness could be associated with products even when cause remained uncertain. Medical texts included remedies for cosmetic injury. Sellers, relatives, and users debated what adhered well, what spoiled, and what made skin worse. Knowledge existed in fragments, competing with the immediate reward of a smooth, pale face. Cosmetic injury can create a cruel cycle. A harsh powder irritates skin. Thicker powder hides the irritation. Cleaning becomes more aggressive. The damaged surface accepts product unevenly, encouraging another treatment. Without understanding the cause, a user may blame weak constitution weather or the failure to apply enough. Lady Seo's older attendant breaks this cycle through observation rather than chemistry. If a product leaves heat or itching, she stops it. Her rule lacks a theory and preserves skin. Practical empiricism is quiet wisdom. The person grinding pigment may have received the greatest exposure. Fine mineral powder rises into breath, settles on clothing, and reaches food unless tools and spaces are separated. Servants and artisans therefore shared risks produced by elite demand. A princess applied lead, somebody mined, processed, transported, and sifted it first. This wider chain matters because beauty hazards rarely remain on one dressing table. Lady Seo's decision to favor rice powder reduces her own exposure and the household's daily dust. Though she has no modern framework for explaining why the opaque jar worries her, the older attendant simply says it is harsh. Practical caution often arrives before scientific language. Men also participated in standards of complexion, hair, clothing, scent, and bodily presentation, though gender-shaped permissible methods. Pale male skin could signify scholarly indoor life. Beards and topknots required grooming. Officials wore regulated robes and insignia. Fragrance accompanied ritual and personal refinement. Lady Seo's husband may criticize extravagant Gache while spending serious time aligning his headgear and caring for a beard that refuses philosophical discipline. Beauty standards rarely disappear for one gender. They change name and receive more respectable explanations. Weather creates safer but relentless enemies. Spring wind roughens cheeks. Summer humidity loosens powder and traps heat beneath clothing. Monsoon rain curls hair and turns courtyard travel into a threat to hems. Autumn sunlight and dust dry skin. Winter cracks lips, knuckles, and heels, while Ondo warmth desiccates one side of the room. The routine changes accordingly. Lighter facial water in summer, wax balm in winter, less oil during humid weeks, warmer bathing cloth, more frequent color changes, different fragrance strength, seasonal textiles, and altered hair security. There is no single ideal product because the peninsula's seasons refuse cooperation. Age brings authority into the dressing room. The mother-in-law who once endured a massive hairpiece can now veto one. An older attendant's judgment outweighs a young woman's enthusiasm because she has seen products fail across seasons. Lady Seo herself will eventually become the person who says the rouge is too bright and the ribbon too youthful, perhaps hearing her own elder's voice emerge with alarming accuracy. Beauty culture is transmitted not only through imitation but through correction. Each generation resists, adapts, and later guards the version it once invented. Sun exposure complicates the preference for pale skin. Elite women could remain within shaded inner quarters, travel in covered conveyances, use veils or cloaks, and protect face and hands with clothing. This associated whiteness with rank, but it also made outdoor light a practical concern. There was no modern tested sunscreen with a labeled protection factor. Plant oils and powders may offer tiny incidental barriers, but claiming historical SPF would be fantasy. The reliable method was shade, eaves, parasols, head coverings, timing, and reduced exposure. Lady Seo crosses the courtyard beneath a pale covering when the sun is high. The protection works because the shadow is visible. Lady Seo's face belongs to one stage of life on one spring day. In summer it will shine more, in winter crack more, in grief go uncolored, and in age carry lines no powder should be asked to erase. The standard around her may remain demanding, but daily practice bends it through comfort, money, health, and personality. This flexibility is easy to miss when we arrange historical beauty into lists. Lists prefer certainty, pale skin, black hair, red lips, full skirt. A lived routine contains exceptions, shortcuts, refusals, and mornings when the well rope breaks. Lady Seo is most historically plausible when she sometimes does less. The extreme version reveals every layer. The ordinary version selects what the day can bear. Age changes both the face and the social permission surrounding it. Literary ideals often center young women, praising smooth, pale skin, dark, abundant hair, a small mouth, delicate features, and a modest manner. Real households depend upon older women whose authority may free them from some youthful display while imposing new expectations of dignity. Hair thins or grays, teeth wear, skin spots and lines appear. A widow, grandmother, or senior mistress selects darker, quieter materials and fewer playful ornaments, but she does not cease grooming. Cleanliness, scented clothing, orderly hair, balm, and a well-chosen jade pin remain forms of comfort and self-respect. Beauty becomes less about resembling a flower and more about resembling herself on a good morning. Spring light reaches the side of Lady Seo's face and reveals texture powder could not remove. No one reaches for another layer. The older attendant has learned that correction without end becomes damage. She turns the mirror slightly away from direct light, not to deceive, but to restore the distance at which a human face was meant to be seen. Body ideals are harder to reconstruct than one confident list suggests. Paintings and literature present slender upper bodies, oval or rounded faces, small hands and feet, gentle posture, and the dramatic full-skirt silhouette, yet clothing creates much of the visible shape. Fertility and health could make some fullness desirable, while labor, famine, disease, and class gave weight other meanings. Joseon people did not conduct a standardized survey asking everyone to rank one body. Ideals contradicted one another: delicate but healthy, modest but well-dressed, secluded but capable, fertile but slender above the skirt. Lady Seo's clothing negotiates these demands by making the upper body appear small and the lower silhouette abundant. Fabric performs the impossible compromise. Illness strips the routine back. During fever, grief, childbirth, or exhaustion, powder and hairpieces yield to clean cloth, loose hair, warm water, medicine, and rest, if rest is available. A noblewoman may have access to physicians or female medical practitioners, herbal preparations, attendants, and food, but childbirth and infection remain dangerous. Clear skin is not proof of virtue, pallor is not always elegance, weight loss is not refinement. Historical beauty language can turn symptoms into compliments, as beauty language still does. Our script refuses that transformation. When Lady Seo is unwell, the extreme routine is not brave, it is postponed. Lady Seo leaves the dressing room at last. She greets an elder, oversees offerings, reviews cloth, hears a dispute about rice allocation, and receives a female relative in the inner quarters. The routine works because nobody pauses to admire its individual parts. Her hair remains level through bows. The faint rouge gives warmth in the shaded hall. The skirt settles around her when she kneels. The scent pouch appears only when she moves. Once the powder near her nose needs repair after tea, and the older attendant presses a trace into place behind a screen. Maintenance takes less than a minute because the morning took so long. The evening mirror is gentler because it asks no social question. Lady Seo can see fatigue without interpreting it as failure. One brow has softened, the lips have lost their red, and a strand near the ear has escaped. These changes record conversation, food, movement, and time. The attendants no longer step back to judge composition. They work close, undoing fastenings and looking for pressure marks. Care replaces presentation. The same hands that built the public woman return comfort to the private one. By afternoon, gravity begins winning. The hairpiece feels heavier. One pin presses at the scalp. White collar cloth no longer looks theoretical. The indigo skirt has gathered dust along a hidden inner fold, and the beeswax balm has surrendered to cups of tea. This slow decline is not failure. Clothing and cosmetics accompany a living body through heat, food, speech, work, and emotion. A look that remained perfectly untouched would suggest Lady Seo had been stored in a lacquer box. She prefers the small evidence of a day. The attendant loosens one invisible fastening when no guest is present. Relief passes across Lady Seo's face more beautifully than rouge. Objects have their own bedtime. Metal pins are wiped free of oil. Jade checked for cracks. Tassels laid straight and porous containers left open only long enough to dry before lids close. Damp cloth never enters the lacquered drawer. The Gache box sits away from the hottest floor section. A tiny charcoal fragment near the incense burner is drowned rather than trusted. Fire safety, pest control, and cosmetic preservation merge into one final circuit of the room. The young attendant performs it from memory while the lamp grows lower. Evening preparation reverses the morning in a different order. Ornaments come off first and return to assigned compartments. The norigi tassel is smoothed so it will not kink. The scent pouch is removed from the jacket and aired before storage. Outer garments are inspected for stains, then hung or folded according to fabric. The collar strip may be detached for washing. The skirt is lifted away from dust. Underlayers follow until movement feels private again. Each tie released restores part of the body from social shape. The room fills with folded color: indigo, ivory, celadon, white. Sleep simplifies the body more completely than any moral essay. Hair rests in one braid. The face holds only balm. Jewelry and rank lie in boxes. Lady Seo settles onto the warm floor beside the quiet breathing of her household and becomes difficult to distinguish from women in other centuries who have also felt relief after removing formal clothes. Rain continues beyond the doors. By dawn, responsibility will gather again around face and fabric. For now, nothing needs to be pale, glossy, symmetrical, or admired. Hair requires patience at night as well. Pins slide out one by one and are counted. The jade binyeo returns to silk. Added hair is separated, inspected, combed, and stored dry in a covered box. Lady Seo's own braid is loosened carefully rather than pulled apart. The scalp aches where weight rested. Fingers massage the hairline with almost no oil, and a broad comb passes through the lengths. Fallen strands are gathered. On a non-washing night, hair may be braided loosely for sleep so it does not tangle. The dark architecture collapses into a simple river again. Her neck feels astonishingly long. Nothing in the closed room is wasted motion now. Water cools, the lamp shortens, and the last comb lies parallel to the drawer edge. Lady Seo's breathing slows as rain covers smaller household sounds. Tomorrow's face waits only as possibility. The rice powder does not know whether it will be opened. The jade butterfly has no audience. Fabric relaxes along old folds, releasing the faint scent it held all day. This stillness is the final stage of care. Objects protected, body unburdened, work paused. If sleep has reached you before the routine ends, you have missed nothing urgent. The courtyard will remain dark, the porcelain closed, and the women of the house allowed a few quiet hours beyond the reach of mirrors. The face comes away with warm water, bean or grain cleanser, and clean cloth. Powder turns the water cloudy. Rouge leaves one pale red trace, then another, and disappears. A waxy base needs gentle oil before washing, just as modern longwear makeup often requires 2 stages. The attendant avoids scrubbing, any irritation from the day is inspected in better lamplight. A plain balm protects lips and dry patches overnight. Lead-based powder, if used, would make careful hand and face washing especially important, though historical cleansing could not eliminate accumulated exposure. Lady Seo looks into the bronze mirror and sees pores, marks, tired eyes, and relief. The socially finished face has returned to a person. The final lamp is covered. Rain, warmed floor, and darkness replace powder, silk, and jade as the senses of the room. Nothing remains to be explained. The household sleeps inside its wooden walls, and the long chain of beauty labor loosens until dawn. You may let it disappear with the courtyard, softly and without needing to follow. Tools are cleaned while she changes into soft night clothing. The room smells of warm water and extinguished incense. Bedding is unrolled on the ondel floor outside. The women's quarters settle into low conversation, a closing door, and the distant rhythm of cloth being beaten smooth somewhere in the neighborhood. Tomorrow will not reproduce every step. Perhaps Lady Seo remains at home and uses no rouge. Perhaps rain makes the elaborate hair pointless. Perhaps an unexpected visit doubles the work. Routines are patterns, not prisons with identical minutes. Yet the values beneath them persist: cleanliness, pale clarity, dark ordered hair, proper dress, controlled scent, and visible respect for rank and occasion. You can let the room fade now. The porcelain lids are closed. The safflower dish is washed. The combs rest in a drawer beneath the folded mirror. Indigo cloth lies inside its chest with one quiet perfume pouch. Beyond the paper doors, spring rain has begun, touching the courtyard stones and the curved roof tiles with the same patient sound. Lady Seo's face needs nothing more from history tonight. It was never simply a surface. It was labor, danger, class, memory, craft, discipline, pleasure, weather, and the work of women whose names were rarely written down. The lamp lowers, the warm floor holds the last of the day, and the long beauty routine, designed to look as though it hardly happened, finally becomes still.